Our story begins with the arid expanse of the Red Desert. In this barren land where life struggles to take root, a lizard finds itself pursued by a cackle of hyenas, their laughter echoing through the desolation. Before the little critter could meet its end, a whirling blade intervenes, slicing through the air with deadly precision. A young boy, the axe's owner, charges in, flipping the roles of predator and prey. His steps kick up clouds of red dust as he closes the gap with a hunter's determination. With another axe gripped tightly, he lunged forward, a whirlwind of ferocity. The clash of instincts ended with the boy slaying the pack leader, unleashing a bone-chilling howl. The remaining hyenas scattered, tails tucked in fear, their courage shattered. The little lizard, wide-eyed, marvels at the boy's prowess, its tiny heart racing with awe and newfound admiration. Saved from its doom, it decides to trail after him, much to his annoyance. Too small to eat and seemingly useless for hunting, the boy tries to shoo it away, waving his hands and grumbling under his breath. But the lizard persists, undeterred. Frustrated, the boy chastises the creature until it reveals its hidden talent. Breathing fire like a living flamethrower, a spark of defiance lighting up the arid air. Their quarrel is abruptly silenced by a deep rumble from beneath. The stone they chose for a resting spot stir, revealing itself as a slumbering beast. Thus, the unlikely duo flees for their lives, pursued by an enraged earthen rhinoceros, its massive form barreling through the terrain. They scramble through the desert until they reach a cliff. With no time to spare, the boy leaps into the unknown, indifferent to the drop, the wind howling in his ears. Thanks to his unnaturally strong legs, he absorbs the fall with ease, landing with a thud that would have crippled an ordinary person. At the bottom, he encounters a hooded figure seated beneath a withered tree, an aura of mystery surrounding him. Curiosity flickers in his eyes, but the rhino is still on his trail, its enraged bellows growing louder. Gripping his axe, the boy resolves to stand his ground, ready to prove his lineage as a descendant of the Black Dragon. The hooded figure rises with patient grace and lowers his hood, revealing white hair and piercing blue eyes, commanding an air of strength. Bro is literally Griffith from Berserk but with straight hair. The beast locks eyes with the man, and in a breathless moment it turns tail, retreating without a fight. Such is the weight of true aura, an invisible force that needs no weapon. The boy is dumbfounded, his grip on the axe slackening in disbelief. The enigmatic man smiles, asking if the boy is unharmed, his voice calm and soothing, yet carrying an edge of authority. Little did the boy know that this chance meeting would alter his destiny and reshape the fate of the world. Ananta, the young hunter, leads his savior back to his village. The weight of the encounter is still heavy in his thoughts. The villagers, naturally curious, gather to learn about the foreigner, their whispers a mix of wonder and caution. Ananta's sister, however, is more concerned about her brother's disappearance. She scolds him for wandering into mystic territory again, warning of the dangers that lurk there. To make matters worse, he's brought home an odd critter and a mysterious stranger, complicating her worries further. Ananta eagerly introduces the man to his sister, Ashta, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. Suddenly, Ashta's illness strikes, forcing her into a fit of black bile coughing, her strength fading as quickly as it came. Worried, Ananta urges her to rest inside, his voice tinged with guilt and concern. The foreigner is escorted to the elder's home, treated to hearty food and warm hospitality, the villagers showing their gratitude to the man who saved their young hunter. The man, introducing himself as Gyuyo, is welcome to stay as long as he needs, his presence both an enigma and a source of curiosity. Yet the little lizard remains wary of him, its tiny eyes never leaving him, as if sensing something the others cannot. The village head assigns Ananta as Gyuyo's guide during his stay, a duty the boy accepts with pride. When asked what brought him to such a remote and unforgiving land, Gyuyo explains he's an explorer researching the culture and incarnates of different regions. To clarify, he unfurls a map, its edges worn from countless journeys, and shares tales of his travels. From the great empire of the east, through the icy ridges of the north, to the vast forests of the west. Now he braves the treacherous Red Desert, seeking the legend of a special incarnate. The incarnate known as Ajidahaka, a mythical being and one of the first 6 incarnates to receive divine power. Ajidahaka is heralded as the strongest among them. Feared and revered, this legendary black dragon has loomed over history as a symbol of untamed power. Dubbed the evil incarnate, Ajidahaka the black dragon is the object of Gyuyo's quest, a legend waiting to be unraveled. Mr. Gyuyo stayed with Ananta and his sister. He even whipped up a medicine made from boiling Gaillardia to improve her compromised immune system and vitality. One sip of the soup quickly made Ashta feel a lot better. Today, he intends to go down the nearby river to investigate something. Ananta wanted to tag along. Being Mr. Gyuyo's guide, the duo set out for the riverside. Before they departed, Ashta lovingly reminded her little brother to be safe out there and come home in one piece. As the duo left the village, the boy noticed that the grown-ups were shooting poisonous glances at the foreigner. It did not take them too long to reach the expansive river of the Red Desert. While grilling and eating fish that they caught in the river, the boy asked Mr. Guyo if he had made any progress in his research after a week since arriving in the village. Unfortunately, progress is slow. All he had were small fragments of the history of the Black Dragon's descendants. Ananta's ancestors used to suffer constant attacks from outside forces, but thanks to the Black Dragon's help, they were able to hold their ground. The current-day descendants of the Black Dragon, like Ananta, continue the tradition of being warriors worshipping the Aji Dahaka. That's about the extent of what Mr. Guyo knows as of now. For some unknown reason, the adult villagers just keep on refusing to tell him anything more. It's as if they're hiding something. Ananta dismissed Guyo's concern as overthinking. Changing the subject, Mr. Guyo asked why he was still hunting behind his sister's back. Guyo didn't want to say anything, but the kid was getting more and more injuries from his daring escapades lately. Even though Ashta might catch on soon, little bro still wants to keep his side hustle a secret. He doesn't want to make her worry any more than she already is. You see, winter comes quickly in this accursed land. He wants to hunt and stockpile as much food as possible before the cold comes. The siblings grew up without their parents. They both died from a disease while Ananta was just a baby. Since then, Ashta has always been protective of her little brother. Ananta feels guilty that his sister's life had always revolved around taking care of him, even missing her prime marrying age. So, he wants to prepare a dowry for her so she can actually start her own family. Guyo asked if it was difficult, and the boy just smiled and answered that it wasn't. Everything he does is for the only family he has, after all. Enough of depressing family talks. The boy is curious why Guyo's so interested in incarnates in the first place. It's simple, really. He's looking for the treasure of the gods. These treasures are said to be the source of the first 6 incarnates' powers. They are relics that transcend the laws of the world and the understanding of the human mind. If anyone can get their hands on those 6 relics holding the power of deities, they would be reborn and see the world that lies beyond the curtain. Hearing about the treasures, Ananta slipped up and asked Guyo if he was after the village's old scale. After a whole week of nothing, Mr. Guyo just got his first lead, and it came from the kid. Realizing that he messed up, Ananta caved in on the condition that Guyo never tells anyone that he blabbed. Back when they were kids, his sister told him a story that stuck in his mind. While it's true that the Black Dragon chased away the ancestors' enemies, the beast's rage never subsided. He went on a rampage until the entirety of Red Desert turned to ash. To control his fury, the Black Dragon willingly surrendered one of his scales to his followers. With the power source removed, the Black Dragon fell into a deep sleep. His followers built a hidden shrine somewhere in the vast Dragon Valley where the best warriors stand guard to protect the scale from falling into the wrong hands. Before Mr. Guyo can ask Ananta to help in tracking the shrine, the kid draws the line. The sanctity of the shrine forbids any foreign influence from entering the sacred place. Ananta has no problems guiding Mr. Guyo anywhere else, but the Dragon Valley is off limits. The man did not fight him on that, but he asked the kid to accompany him to one more place. By sundown, they reached a cliff where the vastness of the Red Desert and its beauty can be seen the best. Under the light of the setting sun, Mr. Guyo started professing his dream. He longs to find a world beyond the current one, a place that connects to the land of gods. Until he achieves that dream, he will continue his exploration even if he has to scour the whole planet. His journey will never end, even if he has to make everyone else his enemy. Then, Mr. Guyo asked if Ananta had ever made the connection between his ancestry and the legendary incarnate. Guyo explained that there's a high possibility that Asta's sickness is directly related to the Black Dragon's curse. Aji Dahaka is as enigmatic as the rest of the all-powerful incarnates. But what's known is that he's the servant of the evil god in command over curses and death. It's not too far-fetched to think that a creature that serves under such the vilest of gods would one day turn around on the people. Guyo continued by saying that the Black Dragon was simply using Ananta's bloodline to pass on the evil god's curse. The kid's parents died due to an unknown illness, and now his sister is hopelessly suffering. Little did Ananta know he was being gaslit and played by the man's unparalleled silver tongue. Hearing that the death of his parents and his sister's suffering are caused by the Black Dragon pushed him closer to crashing out. Seeing the kid slowly buy into his version of the story, Guyo grinned as though he were a fisherman luring his catch. Guyo pulled out a radiant flower and urged the boy to take it to the treasure in the village's care. Using the flower, the curse of the Black Dragon will finally be lifted, curing his sister from her debilitating sickness. Guyo's practically urging him to break the rule of the village. But Guyo cleared up that he's simply providing Ananta with a choice to take matter into his own hands. No matter how it pans out, the choice will always be up to the kid. Unbeknownst to Ananta, he's slowly being influenced by a biblically accurate angel in human form. Ashta woke up in the middle of the night with her little bro missing. She worries and wonders where the brat could be at such a late hour. Wherever he is, Big Sis prayed that he's safe and he doesn't catch a cold. If you guessed that he's in the Dragon Valley Shrine, you'd be right. The guards posted up in the entrance went on high alert as soon as they saw the figure of the white-haired man walking closer. They warned Gyuyo to stop in his tracks as barging into the shrine is a serious crime. Seeing that the foreigner is not listening, one of the guards charged with his spear. Gyuyo grabbed the spear tip with his bare hands, shocking the guard. His shock turned to numbness as he was knocked out by a roundhouse kick to the back of the head. While the other guards watched, Gyuyo finished the jab with a brutal punch while the opponent was down. With the first obstacle taken care of, Gyuyo asked Ananta to come out of hiding. The boy is still gripping the radiant flower in his hand. This is his first time seeing Mr. Gyuyo's combat prowess. That white boy had no trouble taking out the village's mighty warriors. The duo walked into the shrine, eager to finish what they just started before the sun rose. Even inside the halls of the shrine, the stronger guards did not pose any threat at all. It only took a few minutes for the duo to reach the final room. The radiant flower shone brighter, and Gyuyo started snickering mischievously. He stopped himself from giggling and told Ananta that there was no need to be afraid anymore. Everything is going according to plan after all. In the center of the room, Gyuyo unearthed the contents of a small tomb. Inside is the final treasure of the first 6 incarnates, sealed by runic markings. The one scale that goes the other way is Aji Dahaka's inverted dragon scale. Gyuyo thanked Ananta for guiding and accompanying him up until now. The kid nervously asked if doing all the things they'd done could really help cure his sister. Gyuyo held onto his shoulder and called him a dumbass human. A numbskull so incredibly easy to fool. Ananta's heart dropped to his stomach. It is time to make the boy face the consequences of his foolish choice. Gyuyo grabbed Ananta's hands, holding the radiant flower, and forced it near the inverted dragon scale. The scale and the runic marking reacted violently against the flower. The reaction's power explosively went out of control until it produced a beam of light extending up to the heavens. This beam of light was visible all throughout the Red Desert. It can be seen from the village, worrying Ashta. After the light, then came the rumbling of the earth itself. Under a hidden cavern away from prying eyes, a gigantic dark figure awakens. His eyes flashed open, full of malice and fury, like his 1,000-year nap just got interrupted. Aji Dahaka sensed that someone was diddling his reverse scale and stood up. He opened his strong wings and burst the ground open, sending tremors throughout the desert. With unbelievable speeds, he flew up with only one place in mind. The villagers who were jolted awake by the tremors looked to the skies in horror. Their god, the subject of their fear and veneration, the Black Dragon, has shown himself after a long slumber. On the way to his shrine, Aji Dahaka wonders just what fool dares to cover the power of the gods. The entire shrine that stood tall for generations had been reduced to rubble. Our sweet summer child, Ananta, is lying face down on the debris, both of his arms cut off by the beam of light. When he woke up, he was so mesmerized by the sight of Mr. Gyuyo standing in front of the light that he didn't even feel the pain of his limbs being severed. The radiant flower has turned into something else, something more primal and powerful. Mr. Gyuyo clenched its long and hard stem, excited to finally have the missing piece of the puzzle. This is the miracle that will bridge the horizons. Upon taking the mutated flower out of the beam of light, Mr. Gyuyo's clothes randomly evaporated, exposing his chiseled body. He built different, for real. Without any hint of hesitation, he stabbed the hardened stem right into his stomach. The radiance of the flower quickly flowed right into his solar plexus. Every nerve, vein, capillary, and artery in his body was filled with infinite power. After his guttural roars of agony faded, he was left groveling on the ground. That's when Aji Dahaka finally arrives to punish whoever disturbed his slumber. He asked the foolish mortal if he even knew the consequences of taking the inverted scale. The evil incarnate demanded to know the naked bastard's name. Gyuyo just smiled like a real chill guy. A swirling power enveloped him in a cocoon, and once he emerged, his wings lit up the dark field. With 6 wings, a disgustingly monstrous face, sharp talons, and an eye that sees all, Mr. Gyuyo introduced himself as the Wings Incarnate. When Ananta managed to open his eyes and make sense of the situation, he saw a big-ass dragon fighting against a weird-ass angelic bird. Aji Dahaka can feel the multiple treasures that have been absorbed into Gyuyo's body. He thought that it was impossible for an ordinary incarnate to withstand so much power, but he thought wrong. The flame of anger inside the black dragon's heart was stoked as he imagined what this bird did to the owners of the treasures he absorbed. Gyuyo honestly answered that he simply killed 5 out of the 6 original incarnates and stole their treasures. Tonight he intends to finish the job and kill the last one. He flapped his wings, and his feathers shot out like a hail of bullets. Aji Dahaka simply used his scaled wings to defend against such a simple attack. Without the treasure of the gods, this ugly bird is pathetically weak. Gyuyo was unfazed by the trash talk from the last remnant of the Age of Gods, for he's determined to tame the dragon right here and right now. Azidahaka dared him to try it while blasting a pillar of scorching flames into the skies. Gyuyo easily maneuvered out of the way. His 6 wings were not just for show. Since he wants an aerial battle, the evil incarnate joins him in the skies. It has turned into a cat-and-mouse game. Only if the cat and the mouse were a dragon and a thieving, biblically accurate angel. They continued to rise in altitude with the black dragon hot in Gyuyo's heels. As they rose even higher, Azidahaka conjured multiple fire spells around his body, all of them homing on the thief. The dark flames shot out fast and strong, like nuclear bombs with untold power. Gyuyo focused his power on the singular eye in his chest and chanted, "Let there be light." Bro is trying so hard to be God. As pretentious as it was, the light effectively neutralized the dark flames in one fell swoop. Since his flames didn't do any damage, the dark dragon summoned the power of darkness. It was so menacing that it changed the art style. He slashed with his wings, and the dark hail of blades rushed to tear Gyuyo apart. But the wings incarnate simply grinned at such a mediocre attack. He countered with a hail of blades of his own, each one made of light itself. Gyuyo flexed his terrifying control and power by accurately pinpointing each dark blade and bursting it with his own. Each of the light blades continued their momentum, eager to pierce the dragon's body. Once they converged and skewered the evil incarnate, a massive and bright explosion lit up the night sky for as far as the eye could see. The villagers could only watch as their god got bodied by the random foreigner they took in a week ago. Meanwhile, armless Anata struggled to get back on his feet. He tried his best to catch his breath, but taking in air to his lungs felt unbearable. Even in such agony, all he worries about is his sister. Finally, the last of the first 6 incarnates had fallen. His once mighty figure has become disheveled and riddled with damage. Gyuyo, on the other hand, looks like he can go for another god-level battle and be fine. He smugly smiled after destroying the dragon's heart and defeating the final boss. He deserves to be a little smug. His infuriating snicker is pushing it, though. Finally, after all the hard work he had put in, he had all the tools to rise to the heavens. And so, Mr. Gyuyo, the wings incarnate rose to the clouds and never stopped. Ananta looked at the consequences of his foolish actions, fearful and devastated. He thought he was just trying to help his sister, but he ended up creating a peerless deity. With Azidahaka's dying breath, he called on the child and asked if he helped in bringing ruin to everything. Ananta trembled under the gaze of the dying dragon as he apologized for his foolishness. As an evil god writhing at death's door, Azidahaka has no mind to forgive the child's foolish actions at all, and so he bestowed a curse on poor Ananta. A curse that came at the cost of the evil incarnate's physical body, letting his flesh rot away in darkness just to spite a kid. The remaining power in his gigantic frame sizzled and bubbled up. Azidahaka's remaining spiritual force took the form of pure darkness and ferocity. The body that has been deemed too tough to pierce is ripped apart to make way for the Avatar's escape. Ananta stared at the perverse wailing of the evil god, his little mind barely comprehending the horrific scene. Fueled by unfathomable hatred, the dragon's spiritual force took the skies once more. He visibly burned through his dwindling spiritual force every second, but he had one last petty agenda to do. Once Ananta realized where the monster was heading, he felt dread crawling up his spine. This goddamn dragon is heading towards the village. Looking like a physical representation of hell itself, Azidahaka reached his destination in the blink of an eye. He saw the ancestors of the men and women that worshipped him for generations, and did not even hesitate to burn them all down to ashes. The screams of agony from being burned alive filled the air. Ashta, Ananta's caring and affectionate older sister, was one of the unfortunate victims. The whole village has been annihilated in just one flyby. Ananta cried and cried. He lost his arms, and now he has lost everything else too. But the evil incarnate is not done with him just yet. Before completely dissipating into nothingness, Azidahaka finished the curse on the boy. He slammed his spiritual body right into Ananta's fragile little armless frame. He entered every orifice, invading the boy's body and slowly reconstructing his severed limbs. His veins were strengthened and filled with the power of a dragon. His heart pumped and circulated pure darkness throughout his whole body, and his physical form transformed into that of an incomprehensible monster made of hatred. Ananta's figure shifted and mutated, his bones crunched and expanded, and his flesh bubbled and ballooned. With this integration, the foolish mortal shall forever wallow in a mire of death and calamity. The kid is turned into a full-blown vessel of the dark dragon's remaining power. Thus, the years roll forward, unveiling Ananta's warpath, a relentless march of vengeance forged in blood, darkness, and fury. A fierce beast once told a valiant warrior that without fangs in his mouth and claws in his hands, his greatest weapon would be something else. In this draconic beast case, his anger and tenacity are his weapons. He went through a pack of wolves like they were cannon fodder to be ground down to paste. From his blood and sweat, his flesh and bones, he swallows the corpses of his enemies. Targeting the alpha of the pack, the beast ruthlessly bit a chunk of neck meat. With superior force, he ripped it apart, making the blood and gore burst out. With the wail of a dragon's rage, he shall kill and kill. In this world, beasts possessing mysterious powers are dubbed as mystics. The few mystics that were made in the form of humans, molded by the gods, were called the incarnates. Most of them helped humanity in their own ways, but there were those who became drunk on their own power. They were thusly dubbed as evil deities. In some random creepy forest, a group of raiders hunts down their remaining prey. They laughed and joked around while slaughtering civilians. With the blood of the innocent still dripping from their blades, they took all the valuables worth selling before heading back to their hideout. They jested that the monster of the woods might be watching. When they saw all the dead wild beasts strewn around the area, they realized that their jokes might not be far from reality. At first glance, it seems like a territorial fight, but it looks more like a massacre. And among the corpses was a man leaning against the remains of a dead mystic. The raiders immediately dismissed the idea that a single man slaughtered all these beasts. Just when they were about to look for loot, a familiar lizard stepped in to bite on a raider's ankles. Before they can get rid of the little critter, the mysterious man awakens. He unleashed a vicious punch that knocked out one of the scumbags. He boldly declared that anyone who dares to lay a finger on his pet will meet their bloody end. Still clueless as to what they were in for, the raiders drew their weapons and turned them to our boy, Ananta. A few years have passed, and he has grown into a bloodthirsty warrior. He warned the raiders that if they still want to see their loved ones, they better leave now. You see, sleep doesn't come easily to him after hacking anything other than animals. But he won't hesitate either. Not listening to his warnings, the raiders surrounded and charged at him. With his trusty axe, Ananta ripped through the battalion of hardened raiders, painting the ground with their blood and innards. Recognizing his threat level, the crossbowmen maintained their distance and locked their weapons on him. As soon as they fired, Ananta took his lizard pet into his arms and shielded the little critter using his body. If he was a normal human, the damage from the arrows would have been enough to kill him. But he is far from normal. Ananta's demon screeched with an unholy sound as the power of the black dragon was released. After all these years, the spirit of Ajidahaka had completely melded into his body. The evil deity took over, amplifying his power and ruthlessness to an insane level. But Ananta fought through it and stopped the transformation halfway through, dispelling the dark energy. He plopped to the ground and gritted his teeth through the pain. In the end, he was taken alive and was brought to the raider village. The village boss couldn't believe that a lone man could possibly take down such a powerful wolf mystic. While tied up in a post, he warned his captors that they should burn the mystic corpse as soon as possible. When asked why he fought and killed the beast, Ananta simply answered that he was hungry. The raiders who captured him are still wary of the transformation they saw with their own eyes earlier. Their fear is reinforced by the recent rumors of an evil deity that eats dead bodies around the area. But all the boss can see is a human. A human can't possibly leave such a massive and gnarly bite mark on the wolf mystic. That means this Ananta guy is an evil deity in disguise. Hearing their remarks, he scoffed and laughed at their cluelessness. He finds it ridiculous that these lowlives think they are safe inside their flimsy wooden walls. They were stupid enough to tie up an evil deity that eats mystics in mere chains. These dumbass raiders can't even restrain him properly. The unsettling atmosphere was worsened by the stench of dripping putrid blood. The corpse of the wolf mystic has broken free and chomped down on one of the raiders. Ananta had already tried to warn them that it was no ordinary corpse. It's a mystic who has become a servant to another evil deity. In other words, an abomination. The warning bells of the village sounded out, warning the raiders of the emergency. The wolves hiding in the woods have come to rally with the corpse of their leader for a coordinated evil deity attack. Behind them was the silhouette of the horned culprit orchestrating the assault. It's a rotten evil deity that emanates the aura of death. With its directive, the wolves worked together to climb over the walls one by one. Once inside, they took the raiders by surprise. These humans were no match against the relentless charge of the beasts. They had to resort to using fire as a means to stop the downpour of wolves inside the village, burning the walls that protect them in the process. While most of the wolves burn to a crisp, Ananta readies himself for the real fight. His bones crunched and expanded. He beckons to his hunger and thirst to spew and rage. With blood and sweat, flesh and bone, Ananta transformed into the black dragon. His sights have been set on the evil deity, the root cause of it all. He vowed to open his jaws wide and devour it all. Ananta is not fucking around. He faced off against the evil deity and threatened to disfigure the bastard once and for all. After he is done, the deity's face shall embody the terror of a prey facing death. As a response, the deity lets out a horrifically shrill roar. From the woods, the rest of the beasts under the deity's control came rushing in. Boars, wolves, elks, goats, and stags poured in, setting their sights on the black dragon. As soon as they got inside Ananta's kill range, they were crushed into meat paste. With his empowered dragon claws, Ananta lunged forward, shredding through the beast-tide like paper. As he gets closer to the mastermind, the deity uses its dark magic. Infirmity becomes you. Its body crackled and morphed, becoming bigger and sturdier for combat. And so, the two powerhouses clashed. Ananta did not bother wasting energy on defense. As soon as he got close, it devolved into a full-on bloody brawl. With his claws, he slashed and stabbed away at the deity's body. The enemy kept up with his ferocity, responding with vicious slashes of its own. That gave the black dragon an opening to exploit. He grabbed the deity's limb, catching it off guard. He cocked his fist, charging it with the power of the evil incarnate, and sent the deity flying with a malicious uppercut. After sending the bastard flying, Ananta relentlessly chased, chaining another combo, refusing to let up. After maiming the deity beyond recognition, he slowly dispelled his transformation, gradually turning back to his human form. It looks like the fight ended in a completely one-sided manner. Surprisingly, beneath the fearsome form of the evil deity was a young woman with white hair. Ananta grabbed the girl by the neck, yanking her out of the gore. Based on the empty look in her eyes, it seems like she's been moving unconsciously the whole time. Ananta's single moment of hesitation left him open for a sneak attack for a split second. A giant crow came down from the skies, launching sharp feathers. It finally makes sense. The girl was just another victim. The evil deity that had been eating corpses was this giant crow all along. The murder bird's body cracked and shrunk, revealing an old man dripped out with the aura of death. He was quite impressed that Ananta managed to defeat his best puppet. He has been watching the young man since he wandered into this land, curious as to what he seeks. Ananta is not a fan of useless and long-winded drivel. He tossed the girl to the crow, ready to throw hands at any moment. He has no interest in the inane mumblings of beasts. He taunted the crow to come at him, and he'll be happy to end the bird's miserable life. Birdman's power is the ability to control the dead. The idea of killing and taking control of the black dragon's corpse to make a much more formidable puppet than the deer is endlessly appealing to him. Casting infirmity becomes you. The dead wolves, and the plethora of beast corpses in the vicinity, regained the fire of life. Even the dead raiders stood up no matter how badly their bodies were maimed. Ananta has been surrounded at every angle. He is on track to be swallowed in the sea of bloody corpses controlled by the crow. The wolves bit on his flesh, arrows burrowed into his skin, blades stabbed into his frame, and the corpses bulldozed him in every way they could. Seeing Ananta's blood flow freely, the crow laughed and mockingly asked if that was all he had. With his sharp talons, he delivered the killing blow with a supersonic stab. All that's left is the final cry of agony before he finally croaks. Instead of an agonized scream, Ananta's mouth curled into a twisted grin and an amused laugh. The power of Ajidahaka enveloped his body once more, erasing his grievous injuries immediately. His aura overpowered the stench of death, thwarting the crow completely. One look at the black dragon's form up close plunged the crow into the depths of horror he never experienced before. Ananta likes giving his enemies a little bit of hope before he goes sicko mode. Now, he wants to hear this bird croak and howl like the foul beast that he is. Beckoning the power of the evil incarnate, he chomped down and crushed the crow with his fangs. It was a complete and utter mismatch of raw power. With the godlike powers of the black dragon, the crow might as well be a normal chicken dinner. And so, his soul was consumed and incorporated into the sea of countless beasts that Ananta had devoured over the years. While he was mercilessly feeding on the mastermind behind the anomalies in the woods, the woman woke up to the sight of horrors beyond human comprehension. She saw the young man's incorporeal dragon form looking back at her, and a primal fear was instilled in her heart. Stepping away from the hellish scene, Ananta walked towards the girl, making her flinch in terror. He outrightly asked if she had been freed from the evil deity's control. Her head throbbed in pain as memories of a radiant being with 6 wings flashed in her mind. As soon as she mentioned those brightly shining wings, Ananta's eyes flared with fury. He reckoned that she might be another victim of the wings. Ananta introduced himself as the only surviving descendant of the Black Dragon, the one who will devour all evil deities in this cursed plane and kill the wings incarnate. When the sun came up, the only survivors of the massacre were the girl, Ananta, and his lizard. Still reeling from the shock of being brainwashed, the girl could not understand anything about his proclamation at all. She has no clue what the Black Dragon or the wings incarnate are. When she tried to remember by digging deep into her subconscious, a jolt in her brain knocked the girl unconscious. It's a hassle, but she might be somewhat useful for Ananta's mission. While she passed out, the nightmare of being endlessly chased by the deer deity kept on replaying in her mind. She slipped on the blood of her victims, staining her body with her sins. The men and beasts that she devoured while having no control over her actions haunted her psyche. And above all of it is the wings incarnate, the sole source of light in her dark and bloody world. His smile brings a sense of comfort, a salvation from all the harm and suffering she caused. When she woke up from the nightmare, she was greeted by a cheerful girl. Based on her bunny ears, she looks like another incarnate. Ananta, on the other hand, ordered his pet, Ruby, to take care of the corpse mountain from the battle. With Ruby's little body, she unleashed a massive flame that burned the remains of yesterday's war. As the fire flared up, the souls of the damned unleashed one last ear-piercing screech. With that, all the abominations that were under the evil crow deity's control have been taken care of. Ananta walked towards the bunny girl and smacked her in the head for bringing him worthless information. As an info merchant, she's quite bad at her job, and Ananta wasted his time with a bad lead once more. But since he took care of the problem in these woods, he's entitled to his pay. The bunny girl is more concerned about the mystery girl's identity, though. She doesn't quite understand what's happening yet, but she remembers that her name is Nadia. Bunny girl was quite fascinated to meet yet another victim of the Wings incarnate, apart from Ananta. She brought out a magical pocket watch and pressed down on the pusher. Suddenly, a massive sinkhole appeared beneath their feet. They all fell down the hole. Ananta and the bunny girl are used to it by now. The same can't be said for poor Nadia. After a few seconds of free fall, the group arrived in the outskirts of a town surrounding a giant tree. Bunny girl finally introduced herself as a member of Rabbit's Foot, the largest information vendor on the continent. The ever-adorable info merchant Whitefoot. She and Ananta have been a longtime partner of sorts. Right now, they are in the largest trade city in the south, the city of Carpes, and the colossal tree before them is the White Lotus tree. Nadia interrupted her explanation. While she is grateful that they saved her from the grasp of the evil deity, she has no intention of listening to one-sided lectures. What she wants is some answers to her questions. First off, why did they even bring her to this strange city in the first place? Ananta rudely shuts her up and orders her to follow him. It's better if they just show Nadia the reason why they're here. She asked who exactly this Wings incarnate they were gunning for, souring Ananta's mood even more. He scowled and answered that he's a vile beast that fancies himself a god. Whitefoot added that the Wings incarnate can impart great power to others, much in the way the old gods made incarnates, but in this false god's case he imparts imperfect power, such that it's hard to say whether it's a blessing or a curse. Finally, the group arrived in the seedy underbelly of Carpes. The black market is where slaves are being sold. Something happened recently that has caused a boom in the local slave market. Slave hunters are hard at work to bring in all kinds of foreigners and vagrants. They even go as far as selling off mystics. Before Nadia could ask any more questions, Ananta kicked her down to one of the slave houses. When she opened her eyes, she was surrounded by people who had their lives forfeited as soon as they were caught. They are slated to be sacrificed to the Wings incarnate. They are the lambs that will be living sacrifices given at the top of the god tree, the fuel for the false god's power. And just like them, Nadia is going to be a key piece that will help Ananta get the Wings incarnate. From now on, she will play the role of bait. The rest of the plan will be left up to Whitefoot. Before Ananta left, Nadia asked if he had gathered all these human sacrifices himself. She called him despicable for committing such an atrocity. He's basically using innocent people as tools to get what he wants. But Ananta firmly believes that you can't get revenge without getting a little blood on your hands. Nadia's protest fell on deaf ears, but Whitefoot agreed with everything she said. She joked that just thinking about all those poor people waiting for their horrible fate brings a tear to her eyes. But in Nadia's case, she has no choice but to play her part. She killed countless people while under the control of the evil deity. It's a bit hypocritical of her to criticize their methods when she had caused more suffering than anyone else. Even if she had not done it of her own free will, it doesn't mean every crime she committed just disappears. Whitefoot asserted that Nadia's anger shouldn't be directed at her and Ananta. She must remember that they share a common enemy, the wicked Wings incarnate. Meanwhile, our boy had already arrived at his next destination, Carpes' Colosseum. He's checking his gear and getting ready for more bloodshed. Whitefoot found him in the Colosseum gate. She's worried that they might have overdone it this time around. Nevertheless, she managed to get Nadia to agree to help their cause. Right now, she's being led by the Guardians of the Wings to the temple in the White Lotus tree, as planned. The living sacrifices will definitely be their ticket to meeting the Wings incarnate. They have Nadia inside the temple, a place usually inaccessible due to the White Lotus tree's barrier. Offering her as a sacrifice also grants Ananta permission to fight in the arena. The winner of the Battle Royal will be awarded the White Lotus tree branch, gaining an audience to meet the Wings incarnate. Whitefoot thinks the plan is way too convoluted. If Ananta wanted, he could have just demanded the attention of the false god by going on a wild and murderous rampage. As cruel as he is, there are certain lines he refuses to cross. He might be a monster, and yet he insists on distinguishing himself from beasts. He is trying to exact revenge while adhering to his ideals, as ironic as that might sound. Ananta just finished a feast after consuming an evil deity. Right now, he needs a bit of a workout. He told Whitefoot to stay put and watch him as he slaughters beast after beast. She's just worried that he'll attract too much attention that could derail their plans. In the arena, the fight is already raging on. A line of organized knights raised their shields and spears against a colossal cheetah. The beast snarled, but the captain was unfazed as he rallied his troops. Their formation was disrupted not by a beast attack but by Ananta's sudden entrance. He called them clowns and demanded that they stay out of his way. The cheetah dared to raise its claws against Ananta, and he easily countered with a vicious double axe chop to swiftly end the bout. Whitefoot had already warned him not to draw so much attention. Yet here he was, dicing up a mystic like it was nothing. The knight captain could not believe his eyes. He had never seen a single human overpower a mystic to this degree. With the cheetah weakened, Ananta jumped in and whacked the overgrown kitty in the head. The crowd was speechless as they all heard the crunch of the mystic's skull. Ananta unleashed a guttural war cry that echoed throughout the whole arena. He sets his sights unto the god tree, itching to come up and chew the wings incarnate up alive. Meanwhile, the human sacrifices, including Nadia, have been escorted past the tree's barrier. The man waiting for them at the end of the ruins assured them that they have nothing to fear, for they are wholeheartedly welcome to his temple. The temple is protected by a barrier so powerful that people call it holy ground. No one knows why, but the Wings Incarnate has established it as his nest and demands living sacrifices. Those who offer sacrifices are given the chance to fight in the Carpe's arena. If they prove their might against powerful mystics, the fighters are rewarded with a god tree's branch. They are then bestowed a great power by the false god and inducted into the Guardians of the Wings. In order to break through that airtight defense, Nadia will blend in as a sacrifice. She begrudgingly agreed with the plan, but she's still curious as to why Ananta is so hell-bent on killing the Wings Incarnate. Whitefoot can't tell her the exact reason at the moment, but if there was ever such a thing as revenge incarnate, she couldn't imagine a better fit than Ananta. Back to the present, the dubious-looking Wings Incarnate called on to his sacrifices to lift their eyes and behold his presence. He asserted that he is the Holy One, revered by all, the master of the sacred tree, and the one that resonates with the drum of enlightenment in the world of darkness. Behold his holy name, Balzac. Bro's name is literally Balsac. He promised that his living sacrifices would know compassion and would attain immeasurable joy. All they have to do is commit themselves to the wings of salvation. One of the sacrifices dropped to her knees and begged for her and her little sister to be spared. Balzac raised his hand, applauding their noble heart, before making the girl's head explode on the spot. Her little sister watched as blood, skull fragments, and brain matter blasted everywhere. None of the sacrifices dared to speak up after that. Balzac plopped down to his throne and insisted that all were equal before death. All he did was liberate the girl from fear and pity. Nevertheless, everyone shall soon be reunited with her in nirvana. One of the guardians motioned to draw his blade after noticing something peculiar about one of the captives. Nadia finally had enough and summoned her monstrous deer form. Her aura spread around the temple, choking the guardians one by one. She called out Balzac for being a false savior, just another vile murderer. He didn't expect that an incarnate was hiding among his sacrifices this time around. He found it amusing. Yggdrasil Cernunos. After chanting those two words, Nadia was cloaked by the dark energy of the incarnate inside her body. She still feels the guilt and burden of being responsible for countless atrocities. She almost succumbed to her own power, but she was brought back by a kid's plea to not lose. With renewed determination, Nadia beckoned Yggdrasil to raise a forest inside the temple. The vines and branches grab hold of the guardians, while the rest of the winding stems form a protective barrier around the sacrifices. Nadia assured everyone that she would protect them all. But Balzac quickly answered back with a lightning-fast attack against the impertinent foul doe. He feels insulted that a nameless incarnate from the borderlands would even dare to challenge someone as renowned as him. But now that Nadia's mind is clearer than ever, she finally remembers that she is the nature incarnate. Nadia was able to block the first attack and didn't feel any real threat. Beckoning the power of nature, she formed a hammer made of Yggdrasil vines. With this wooden construct, she intends to crush Balzac once and for all. With a cheeky grin, Balzac summoned an immense and ancient power as he chanted his spell, "Annihilation becomes you." The explosion can be heard all the way down the Carpe's arena. Ananta knew that he was running out of time. Nadia watched in horror as her attack shattered into a million little pieces. Yggdrasil Sucellus, her most powerful offensive spell, was neutralized in a single blow. Balzac asked if that was the last of her unsightly tricks. He snapped his fingers, and a massive creature burst out of the ground. By its decrepit appearance, the creature looks a lot like an abomination. Before Nadia could even process what was happening, 2 bone spikes had already lodged deep into her body. Balzac proudly introduced his grotesque faithful servant to the world. For someone who claims to be a god, he sure has demonic tastes. Carpe's favorite pastime continued despite the commotion above. Ananta sliced his way through every mystic beast that they brought out. He looked into a white tiger's eyes and understood the resentment it felt against him. As a sign of respect, he did not turn his eyes away from the beast's death. With one swing, he crushed the valiant mystic's skull. The knights who have been sidelined didn't expect that they would be pushed out of contention, with the mysterious young man claiming the win. Just as they expected, Ananta was declared the winner of the arena. After the trial, the guardians came out to bestow the branch of the white lotus tree upon the victor. The leader of the knights, Lord Bernhard, told his men that even if they lost, their plan would still proceed. They are determined to get the branch no matter what. Ananta took the twig into his hand. This is his ticket for the next part of the plan. Back in the temple, Nadia slowly bleeds out after being caught off guard by Balzac's speed. With grave injuries, she still has to deal with the abomination under the false god's control. At this point, she's just protecting the sacrifices out of sheer stubbornness. The people she's protecting had long since fallen to despair. Giving them salvation from the prison of terror is a mercy at this point. Angered by his delusional words, Nadia gained a second wind as she cursed Balzac for being a disgusting, evil deity that spreads death and terror. But Balzac believes that true salvation begins with despair. He bypassed Nadia's protective barrier and summoned branches of his own to pick off the sacrifices one stab at a time. In a split second, the people she tried to protect were helplessly massacred. Then came the abomination towering over the nature incarnate. She summoned Yggdrasil once more, stabbing her roots into the monster's deathly flesh. Balzac continued with his deluded godlike savior drivel with an unhinged smile on his face. The branches that killed the living sacrifices started extracting their life essence. Their souls flowed directly into the ungodly abomination. Balzac is simply siphoning their essences into the wilderness of hell, where both life and death coexist. He is immortal, while all humans must someday face death. Therefore, he's the only existence that can bring meaning to insignificant lives. Even his guardians were not spared, using them as vessels. Balzac juiced up his abominations, deeming everyone else as insignificant nourishment for the white lotus tree to create immortal warriors. He firmly believes that life shall be circulated as the light that protects his noble tree. When Nadia thought of just how many lives Balzac had claimed, her rage flared up. As much as she wanted to bash the false god's face in, she was completely outclassed. He confessed that he has taken so many lives that counting has become meaningless. Before he could finish her off, the temple gates slowly rumbled open. A dark presence barged into the holy ground, narrowly missing Balzac by a hair's breadth. It was, of course, our boy, Ananta. Equipped with the holy branch, he came in with the intent to kill. Balzac was caught off guard, giving Ananta the opening to stab the false god right in the face. After leaving his prize lodged deep in Balzac's face, he turned to Nadia and praised her luck for staying alive for so long. Unfortunately, the branch of the white lotus tree wasn't very effective as a weapon against the bastard. All it did was piss off Balzac, showing his true colors. He couldn't believe that someone could kill all the guards and reach the shrine all alone. When Ananta finally got a good look at the enemy's face, he asked who the hell the bastard he just stabbed was. He asked Nadia why she was wasting time with a nobody instead of fighting the wings incarnate. Hearing his blasphemous words angered Balzac even more than being stabbed. Ananta dared to step foot into his holy sanctuary, and now he dares to show contempt against the wings incarnate. The false god started transforming into his true form, vowing to pull out the young man's irreverent tongue with his own hands. Ananta just told the bitch-ass imposter to shut up and stop cosplaying as the wings incarnate. Lord Bernhard, the leader of the knights from the arena, is also slaughtering the guardians for his own agenda. With what remained of his troops, he rallied them forward to kill everyone who stood in their way. They tried to time it so that they could enter right when the barrier was lowered for the victor, but their target was nowhere to be seen. When he finally peeked through the gate, expecting a trap, he saw the remaining guardians slaughtered and scattered across the stairway. Maybe the mystery man who beat them in the arena is after the wings incarnate too. Inside the temple, Nadia asked what Ananta meant by saying that Balzac is not the wings incarnate. He reminded her why people call the bastard the wings incarnate in the first place. His most recognizable trait is his 3 sets of white wings. Yet this imposter delusionally claimed the name without even a proper set of wings. His impersonation lacks effort and accuracy. Ananta was pissed off for yet another wasted effort. He thought he'd get his revenge, but in front of him is just another fake scumbag who loves to run his mouth. Balzac is caught in his lie. He dropped all pretenses and shut his ears off. His remaining guardians charged Ananta with a kill order. They didn't even warrant a full transformation. He turned one of his arms into a dragon's claw and cut Nadia loose. It's up to her to salvage an unsalvageable situation. It looks like 2 of the sacrifices, the kids, managed to survive the massacre. Nadia's task is to retrieve the survivors and scramble to get out of the temple. Ananta, on the other hand, used his single claw to rip the face off these so-called immortal warriors. While he was busy painting the temple with the blood of its guardians, the deathly abomination opened its maw, exposing an unsettling amount of sharp teeth. Aiming at Ananta, it launched innumerable spikes with impressive force. Nadia dove forward, shielding the kids from the impact using her body. Ananta was forced to use his full black dragon form, increasing his speed and dodging the spikes. He countered by launching his whole body against the bird-like abomination at breakneck speeds. With his massive and compact body, he came barreling down like a meteor, overwhelming the abomination by force. The disgusting monster was tough. It can tank clean hits, and it can also dish out vicious attacks of its own. But as soon as Ananta injected a little bit of the evil incarnate's power in his fist, he caused some substantial damage with a single punch. He crushed the abomination's jaw, crushing most of its fangs. If it was a one-on-one, this would have been a cakewalk. But Ananta is up against another annoying bastard. Balzac's supersonic speed and immense power crushed the black dragon's chest under his talons. He praised the young man's strength. He found Ananta threatening enough to show his full power. Summoning his ancient power at point blank, he chanted, "Annihilation becomes you once more." Nadia recalled that this was the spell that shattered her best weapon. Fortunately, Ananta was not dumb enough to get hit by a move with such a long cast time. He grabbed the bird's hand and opened his maw to chomp on the chicken's head. Balzac was forced to cancel his attack and defend with his talons, calling Ananta a mindless barbarian. Our boy tried to land another swipe, but the chicken jumped backward and took to the skies to create space. Ananta chased after him with relentless intensity. No matter how fast Balzac moved, he was always a hair's breadth away from being beheaded or mortally injured. The false god tried to use his advantage in aerial battles, but Ananta kept up with his ridiculous jumping capability. Unfortunately for the black dragon, Balzac was just trying to bait him into a disadvantaged state. With his superior power in the skies, the false god landed a heavy blow across Ananta's body. With the sharpness of his talons, the bird managed to chop one of the black dragon's arms. Ananta roared in pain and annoyance as the endless power of the evil incarnate quickly worked to regenerate the missing limb. Balzac was taken aback. He thought he finally cornered his enemy. He wasn't expecting a cheat skill like complete regeneration. If losing a limb is solved in the blink of an eye, what else can an enemy do? To make matters worse for the chicken, Ananta wasn't just a close combat specialist. Using the scathing power of the black dragon, he can launch devastatingly sharp blows from afar. Balzac tried to defend against the projectile slash with his pathetic little twigs. The branches were quickly cut down, and the slash went on to slice his body in half. The imposter bird chirped with agony. He had never been pushed this hard. His transformation is slowly becoming undone. Even while crawling on the ground, he still views the black dragon as a lowly, insignificant worm. He still has the abomination under his control to keep Ananta busy. And before you know it, the upper half of Balzac's body grotesquely merged with the vile abomination. With this disgusting form, he intends to demonstrate the difference between him and Ananta. Above the largest trade city in the south, the peaceful sunny day was interrupted by a dimensional crack slowly spreading. A fist emerges from the ether, breaking the dimensional barrier like glass. An ominous silhouette appeared before the city, seemingly coming from a boundless space. A hooded figure stepped out of the dimensional crack, setting his sights on the colossal tree. Meanwhile, Balzac is arrogantly displaying what he claims to be his brilliant wings. He kept on spouting that he was the true wings incarnate. Tired of hearing his bullshit, Ananta seized an opening and stabbed the imposter with his claws. Even such a heinous injury wasn't enough to put the dirty chicken to rest. Borrowing the power of the white lotus tree, he spawned some twigs to restrain the black dragon's movement. While the target is held in place, Balzac opens his distorted stomach mouth, and countless spiked fangs emerge. He dropped all pretenses and threatened to grind Ananta into minced meat once and for all. While the spikes were launched, the black dragon readied his claws for defense. The resulting clash kicked up a storm of debris. Using the dust as cover, the black dragon moved with incredulous speed to get a better angle of attack. When Balzac noticed where he was, the scathing fist of the black dragon was already in lethal range. As soon as his first punch landed, Ananta did not give the chicken another moment to breathe and compose himself. Even with such a primal series of attacks, the black dragon still exercised caution and dodged as soon as Balzac found the strength to counter. Quickly losing momentum and blood, the dirty chicken felt frustrated. As soon as Ananta landed, Balzac finally saw why he was being overwhelmed with speed. The black dragon's form has changed once more. When Ananta was caught by the twig trap, he did not hesitate to cut off his legs to get out of danger. In midair, he regenerated new legs, adapting their shape and form to be more suited for speed. He is faster than the eyes can see. He can heal and transform. He's practically invincible with the unfair combination of his powers. Even if that's the case, Balzac is still hell-bent on annihilating the heretic that challenges his legitimacy. Borrowing the power of the white lotus tree once again, he tried to catch the black dragon slipping with the same trick. Even with faster-moving roots, he struggled to catch the slippery dragon with legs built for speed. Similarly, Ananta is also struggling. No matter how many times he lands a killing blow, Balzac will keep healing as long as he's connected to the White Lotus tree. If this fight drags on any longer, he's on track to lose the battle of attrition. Ananta set his sights on the tree itself and braced his legs for the longest jump he could perform. He launched himself vertically and punched a massive hole in the temple's ceiling. He created an instability that made the structure slowly crumble. As a result, he was caught by the roots in midair. Balzac laughed at Ananta's attempt to crush him with debris. From afar, this looks a lot like a checkmate. The black dragon is restrained as the grotesque mouth of the abomination opens up. When asked how many lives Balzac has taken, he arrogantly reiterated that counting the number of his victims is tiresome and meaningless. Since that's the case, Ananta can just let the weight of those deaths be the false god's annihilation. Beckoning the power of the last evil deity he consumed, the black dragon cast infirmity becomes you. From the hole in the ceiling, the reanimated live sacrifices straight out of the White Lotus tree poured down. With their decomposing bodies, they tried their hardest to cling to the monster that sentenced them to death. They bit, stabbed, and clawed the flesh of the false god that sacrificed them for his own gain. Balzac had killed so many people that they formed a mountain of death surrounding him. The physical evidence of his sins clung to every inch of the abomination. Bleeding out of every pore, the only thing he can think of is making more live sacrifices to recover. His deplorable desire to consume life was impeded by a light beam coming out of another dimensional crack. The radiant beam came down like the hammer of justice, pulverizing what remained of the abomination's body. The mysterious being from the boundless space intervened and finished the job. He looked at Nadia with a cold and emotionless glare. The otherworlder then dropped to his knees and lowered his head in complete submission, as he asked if his lord enjoyed this little trip. The white-haired kid that Nadia saved slowly got up. Much to everyone's surprise, the boy's body expanded, his white hair grew, and his voice got deeper. He reprimanded the otherworlder, Beharin, for making such a crude entrance. The man ripped the rags off of his body, exposing a chiseled frame. Under the brilliant light of the sun, Gyuyo, the wings incarnate, has finally shown himself. Whitefoot watched the bizarre development from afar and reported back to Rabbitfoot. The appearance of the ruptured space in the sky will surely cause a stir. She also identified that the wing's assistant had shown up. That pretty much confirms that the wings incarnate himself is in the city. Mr. Gyuyo walked out like a supermodel after the fight had concluded. His mere presence alone made Nadia's heart pound erratically. Meanwhile, Balzac is still holding on to the tiny sliver of life he has left. He looked up to see the man he had been impersonating and recognized Gyuyo. As it turned out, Gyuyo is the cold-blooded lord he once served. The one who removed his wings. Well, his wings only got removed as a punishment for becoming drunk on power. Beharin grabbed Balzac by the neck as Gyuyo lectured his disgraced underling that his wings were only for those who were worthy of going into the heavens. Balzac still feels the pang of betrayal in his bones, for he was the one who revered his lord more than any other. He sacrificed tens of thousands of lives just to create the body of the abomination and regain his wings. But the foolish Balzac just never realized how truly insignificant he is in the grand scheme of things. Like the ball sack that he is, one touch from his former lord scattered the false god into dust. Under the mountain of decomposing corpses, Ananta opened his eyes. He remembered what Mr. Gyuyo said to him all those years ago, how he longed to find a world beyond the one they have, a world that connects to the land of gods. Until he achieves that dream, his journey will never end. He will do everything in his power, even if he has to make enemies of everyone else in the world. Even if his actions lead to pain and suffering for everyone else, even at the cost of countless innocent lives. Remembering Ashta pumped Ananta's veins full of rage. Beharin regrettably reported that the White Lotus tree appears to have nothing to do with Gyuyo's endgame. Balzac simply combined the power of the branch with a god tree. It would be shameful to compare it to the world tree itself. At this point, Gyuyo is more interested in meeting an interesting acquaintance in the form of Nadia. Beaten and bloodied, Ananta climbed up from the mountain of corpses and set his sights on his lifelong target. Pushing the black dragon's power to the limit, his claws become sharper than ever before. He sent 2 bloody air slashes forward, hoping to cut the wings incarnate from afar. Before the attack can even touch Gyuyo, the loyal Beharin jumps in to defend his boss. After all the years of chasing leads and accumulating strength, Ananta finally found the object of his hatred. Like a wild animal, he ran forward, moving faster than he ever moved before. Beharin stood his ground, ready to defend his boss from any harm. When the two finally collided, it was a one-sided beatdown. A single punch from the odd-looking fella blasted Ananta's head cleanly off. With the black dragon's unparalleled vitality, his head quickly reformed and regenerated. From the skull to the flesh, skin, and scales, Ananta became whole once more. His wrath grew by the second. Since it appears that there's no room for talking, Beharin squared up. The black dragon returned the favor with a powerful punch of his own, almost twisting Bahiran's neck. While the two titans go blow for blow, the Wings Incarnate's gaze is focused on Nadia. Just when he was about to touch her, Lord Bernhard, who'd been patiently biding his time, came in swinging with his axe. Such a crude attack was easily avoided by Gyuyo. He praised the warrior's unrelenting drive. Seasoned old Bernhard here has been trying to hunt him down for a while now. On the other side of the temple, the black dragon is still trying to brute force his way through Bahiran and failing. He can't focus on the enemy in front of him as he's tunnel-visioned on killing Gyuyo. Ananta just wants to rip Bahiran to shreds and end everyone's lives. Sensing a change in his aura, Gyuyo's lapdog jumped back in caution. The black dragon's body is stretching and growing at a visible rate. His scales are becoming larger to accommodate the expanding flesh and bones underneath. His back split open as the black dragon's wings grew into full bloom. With a frightening roar, Ananta surprised everyone in the vicinity. The true form of Ajidahaka has finally shown itself. Spurred by Ananta's frenzy, the evil incarnate has grazed the world once more. Gyuyo smirked, seeing this as an opportunity to have a pleasant reunion with an old foe. Ajidahaka, the black dragon, has descended for round 2. In his subconscious, Ananta has been eked out by the evil incarnate, losing all control. Our boy was trapped inside his mind. Ananta didn't know where he was or how he got there, but he knew he needed to get out quickly. The lingering spirit of the black dragon appeared before him. It encouraged him to remember the target of his burning desire for revenge, the vile man who took everything from him. Ajidahaka wants the cursed mortal to give his body over to rage and never stop his wailing. In the real world, the black dragon raised its claw and pounced at Bahiran. Gyuyo's lapdog very narrowly dodged out of the way. Seeing that he stopped speaking, it's obvious that Ananta has completely given up all self-control. Bahiran clenched his fist and locked in, calling the young man pathetic for losing his head. The black dragon responded to the insult by unleashing hellfire. Gyuyo's lapdog defended himself with a punch that released a powerful golden light. Their attacks collided, causing a massive sonic boom. Gyuyo quietly watched from afar, shielding himself from the residual impact using his white wings. He looked to his side and saw old Bernhard standing still strong. The unquenchable flames of hell threatened to swallow him, yet he remained composed. They may be enemies, but Gyuyo acknowledged Bernhard's resilience. The old warrior rushed in with an axe in hand, desperate to end Gyuyo's world-shattering delusions. But the difference between their powers is akin to heaven and earth. An imperceptible prick almost eliminated Bernhard right then and there. Gyuyo unleashed a targeted flash of light and made the old warrior plop to the ground. The Wings Incarnate turned his attention back to Nadia, telling her that she had changed. In the past, she never trembled in his presence. It's finally coming back to her now. He had met Gyuyo before. He was an angelic figure that served as the only source of light in her blood-soaked memories. He gave her the echo of the branch, proof that she had been selected as a vessel for a great tree. You see, a branch is a miraculous product that breaks down the wall of an incarnate, thus conveying transcendental power. Gyuyo believes that they are the key to connecting the horizons of different worlds. His most earnest desire. The Wings Incarnate walked up to the abomination's corpse and combined it with the branch. The gigantic body, born from tens of thousands of human sacrifices, was assaulted by heavenly lightning until it was molded into a new vessel in the form of a child. Molded from countless souls and now freed from the bird's cage, Gyuyo called the kid his brother. With an unhinged look on his face, the chiseled abomination named himself Ziz. Back to the action. Bahiran is still impressively pushing back the evil incarnate. He's outclassed in every category, especially in size, but Gyuyo's lapdog is quite a powerhouse. His golden punches can go toe-to-toe with one of the first 6 incarnates made by the old gods. Ajidahaka roared and shook the entire temple down to its foundations. It flapped its wings and slowly gained altitude. Blasting through the ceiling as if it didn't exist, the black dragon took to the skies. The crumbling temple was destroyed even further. Gyuyo assured Ziz that even if they're going against the evil incarnate, there's nothing to fear. From above, Ajidahaka charged up a massive ball of hellfire, an attack so massive that it threatened to destroy the whole city. When he fired the blazing baldachin, doom and destruction awaited everyone who would be caught in the blast. Gyuyo remained calm. In fact, he took this flimsy attack as an insult, like the black dragon is looking down upon him. He firmly believes that the firmaments hold no place for Ajidahaka. With a serene voice, he summoned his godlike powers and cast Let There Be Light. Not only did it neutralize the blazing baldachin, but the light also continued to flash through, eventually reaching the black dragon in the skies. By the time the light pierced through the stratosphere, Whitefoot had finished her live report back to Rabbitfoot HQ. The White Lotus Tree, revered by all, has been destroyed by the tremendous powers of the Wings Incarnate. Humanity's only ace in the hole, the Vengeance Incarnate, has officially lost. After the fall of Ananta, the White Lotus Tree lost its magnificent luster and was reduced to a ruinous amalgamation of dead branches. Gyuyo was dissatisfied with how long the operation took him to complete. Nevertheless, it's time for him, Baharin, and Ziz to return to their pantheon. His lapdog opened the portal, and a spatial crack appeared out of thin air. Before they left, Nadia asked Gyuyo why Ananta saw him as a vile beast with delusions of a god. She has no memories of meeting him before, but he felt infinitely familiar. Gyuyo smirked, only now realizing that the dragon he smoked was that child from all those years ago. He answered that everything in this world is created through direct and indirect causes. When those two elements disperse, everything dissolves. Such is inevitability. After his Riddler-ass answer, he bade farewell to the nature incarnate. Meanwhile, in a faraway land, a scar-riddled muscle mommy's bath time was interrupted by her underling's urgent message. They've just received news of Lord Bernhard's return from the southern outpost. Muscle mommy was glad that her bath was interrupted by good news. She would have slapped Mir if it was bad news. The messenger added that the Lord is coming with an incarnate and 2 humans in tow. It would be in their best interest to reserve judgment until after they've seen their guests. In a fortress strategically built and hidden on a mountain face, Lord Bernhard and the survivors of Carpes entered the gates. After that cursed battle, Lord Bernhard approached Nadia with an invitation to his organization's headquarters. Ostensibly, he wants to work together against the Wings Incarnate, but he's more likely interested in Ananta's power. Furthermore, Whitefoot had disappeared. With nowhere else to go, Nadia accepted the invitation and found herself heading northeast to meet a certain person. They entered the royal hall, lined with war-hardened soldiers from left to right. There's a watchful beast woman, a nonchalant hulking horned man, and entering from her chambers was the scar-riddled muscle mommy. She's the one that Nadia needed to meet. The eldest child and former princess of the ruined kingdom of woman warriors, Valkyria. The head of the people seeking vengeance against the Wings Incarnate. Sitting on the throne is Queen Lagertha Einherjar, head of Levatane. Firstly, she welcomed seasoned old Bernhard with a warm smile and insisted that they omit tiresome formalities. She wanted his report about the expedition right away. Bernhard recounted undergoing the trial of Carpes' arena. Despite some unforeseen circumstances, they managed to reach the temple and meet Gyuyo, the Wings Incarnate. Bernhard detailed their battle and expressed his shame for losing handily. Queen Lagertha was angered by his shame as a warrior for returning after being marred by defeat. Old Bernhard asserted that no matter how many times he may lose, he swears to be the one to crush Gyuyo's throat with his own hands. Queen Lagertha was pleased with his determined reply, her laugh echoing throughout the throne room. Then she asked who the incarnate that he brought along was. Nadia was introduced as the Nature Incarnate, a member of a separate group aiming for Gyuyo's head. Old Bernhard added that she is a new ally who can lend her power to the cause. She helped them immensely with her healing magic after the mission. Nadia agreed to help in exchange for treating and protecting a barbarian man and a plain girl. The girl, the only surviving human sacrifice, is relatively healthy and should be sent to the civilian quarters soon. As for the barbarian, he's still under close monitoring in the infirmary. He is badly injured and unconscious. After receiving the rundown of the situation at hand, she got up from her throne and walked towards Nadia. She offered her hand, and Nadia formally greeted the warrior queen. As soon as their hands touched, the queen's grasp tightened as she interrogated Nadia for her real agenda. She threatened that if Nadia turned out to be a spy, a grim fate would await her here in Levatane. Nadia remained composed and replied with a proposal to exchange information regarding the branch inside her body. That confirmed one of the warrior's suspicions. The beast woman raised her claws and warned the queen not to listen to another word coming out of Nadia's mouth. She's been stinking up the royal hall with the wing's stench from the moment she entered, after all. When confronted about whether she really has the branch of the wings inside her body, Nadia truthfully answered. But she also swore that she knew nothing about what this mysterious relic inside her was. Queen Lagertha reckons that if the Wings Incarnate is searching for his branch and Nadia, she might offer Levatane a unique opportunity that might never come again. Before the meeting could proceed any further, a hurried messenger entered the hall with haste. She asked forgiveness for barging in so suddenly, but she's bringing urgent news. In the civilian quarters of the fortress, an out-of-control draconic beast is causing mayhem and bloodshed. This rampage was reminiscent of the first time that the power of evil incarnate took over his body. Ananta had finally lost it. With the power bursting out of his body, the evil incarnate took over his being for the first time ever. He was just a young boy back then. Unable to rein in the overwhelming amount of magic, armless Ananta was consumed by the darkness. His perception of his body was erased bit by bit, his conscience slipping away. But even in his dragon form, his gaze automatically wandered in the burning village's direction. Slowly, he willed his monstrous body to crawl towards the fire. With pure instincts alone, he sped up, each step resulting in a booming quake. Halfway through, his speed had reached an unimaginable degree. As he arrived on the outskirts of the fiery village, he instinctively wailed in grief. Young Ananta scanned the surroundings and saw a burnt corpse in the direction of his home. The sight of that corpse and the smell of burning flesh knocked the kid back to his senses. He walked out of the dragon's body and ran to his burning hut. His arms had miraculously regenerated, albeit taking on the darkness of the black dragon. The face of Ananta's caring sister flashed in his mind. Her soft gaze and youthful beauty have been reduced into unrecognizably charred remains. He remembered that the last thing she said to him was to come back safely. Somehow he managed to do that, but at what cost? Ananta took Ashta's charred corpse into his hands, her usual warmth turning into unbearable heat. The kid trembled and screamed his angered heart out to the heavens, tears of blood pouring down his eyes. At that moment, the thought of killing Gyuyo with his own 2 hands had taken over his mind and heart. He had been dreaming of that tragedy for years now. When Ananta woke up after the battle, he opened his eyes to an unfamiliar infirmary. On his bedside was an adorable little rat girl, watching him sleep. Seeing her only confused him even more. Why is there a little incarnate watching him sleep? Even with all the injuries he accumulated from the battlefield, he forced himself to get up. His mind is still fixated on finding and ending Gyuyo once and for all. Before he could take one step out of the bed, blood splattered out of all his orifices. He gasps for air, struggling to breathe. His vision blurred, and black bile continuously flowed out of his body. This is the drawback of using too much curse power. Despite that, Ananta still tried to get up and miserably failed. The little rat girl cheerfully skedaddled out of the room to find an adult. After gritting his teeth through the pain and regaining a bit of strength in his legs, Ananta managed to get out of the infirmary. The civilians in the fortress froze in fear as soon as they saw the beaten and bloodied man walking in the streets. Ananta still can't figure out where he is. Looking up, he didn't see the sky. He reckoned that he might be in some kind of underground city. The patrolling guards stopped him from spreading any more unease to the citizens. Judging by his strange appearance, it's evident that he doesn't belong in Levitain. The guards urged him to cooperate with his arrest or die if he resisted. Ananta sighed and stood on business, ready to throw hands even when he's literally 1 HP. The tension was broken by one man's interruption, looking for his child. The guards referred to him as Lord Owl. Ananta saw in this man's hand a familiar burned-off symbol. When he was just a kid, Whitefoot warned him about this coat of arms. An eye surrounded by 6 wings and 2 blades, the symbol of Gyuyo's servants. He tried to grab onto this sussy Lord Owl fella only to get almost blinded by a lightning-fast sword draw. Lord Owl slashed away, but Ananta managed to dodge clumsily with sheer instinct. Owl apologized for attacking so abruptly. It's just that his pet peeve is people touching him from behind. Ananta regained his footing and ferociously responded with a haymaker that went wide. Seeing the bloodthirsty look in his eyes, Lord Owl turned serious. Owl hopped back to the guard's position and complained that he shouldn't even be fighting since he was supposed to be off duty today. He found it wildly interesting that even though the young man looked like he was about to drop dead in a single strike, he was still exuding such a horrifying, murderous aura. Ananta confronted the man about the coat of arms in his hand, and his relationship to the wings incarnate. As a response, Owl bum-rushed him with the sword in hand, his eyes screaming bloody murder. Ananta's senses are sharp. He managed to step out of the way before the blade could skewer his head, but Owl was relentless. He was attacking with high intensity and the intent to kill. Ananta had to endure some cuts along the way until his back was pushed against a wall. Lord Owl asserted that if he's after something, then he should take it by force. With a wide swing, Lord Owl showed his raptor's claw technique. Owl was surprised that his blade failed to slice through flesh. As it turned out, Ananta managed to summon his incarnate power in time, blocking the attack. Between his dragon arms, he glared at the swordsman with vitriol. The guards finally made themselves useful and sent someone to report back to the queen and request reinforcements. Reinvigorated, Ananta raised his claws and started going apeshit on the swordsman. Unfortunately for him, attacking fast and loose like a barbarian is not going to work against Lord Owl. But the expert swordsman knew that getting hit by one of these attacks could result in his death. Even still, all he has to do is dodge until Ananta runs out of gas, and that shouldn't take too long now. As soon as the young man showed signs of staggering from his previous injuries, Lord Owl pounced to capitalize on his weakness. It was a clean stab right to the chest. A fatal wound to any normal human out there. But to Ananta, a mortal wound is just another insignificant setback. His flesh visibly stretched and healed around the blade. Lord Owl felt as though he had just stepped into a monstrous trap. The young man's face ripped open, exposing rows upon rows of fangs. With a bloody roar, Ananta's black dragon form took over. With an agonized wail, the evil incarnate took over his body once more, pushing what he can endure to the limits. It was obvious that his transformation was not as stable as his previous ones. The civilians who foolishly stayed around the vicinity to watch were abashed by fear. Imagine fighting a fucking rampaging dragon on your day off. Lord Owl is not having a good day at all. Nevertheless, he stood his ground and slowly drew his blade once more. As the monster came face to face with the swordsman, Lord Owl felt a feeling that he hadn't felt in a long time: fear. He froze in place, only to get bailed out by Queen Lagertha herself. The supreme warrior of Levitane came in swinging with her great sword. Her slash landed squarely on the black dragon's neck, opening a deep gash that bled profusely. The beast roared in pain as it went out of control. While the black dragon bleeds out of his neck, the warriors of the fortress braced themselves as they surrounded the beast from all angles. Nadia and the rest finally caught up. She asserted that Ananta is not an enemy, but the queen firmly believes that anyone who puts her people in danger cannot be left breathing. So this disgraceful beast deserves to get his life cut short right here and right now. The black dragon swiftly moved and raised its claws. Before anyone could react, it swung its sharp weapons, surprising Queen Lagertha. Instead of attacking them, the beast dug deep into its neck wound, tearing its own flesh open. He ripped the flesh open, exposing the gore and blood underneath. With superior strength, the monster almost ripped its own body in half with force. The guards have never seen anything like this before. With one final rain of blood, the black dragon's body fell limp on the ground. As the power of the evil incarnate subsided, his body and energy scattered to the wind. Queen Lagertha walked closer and saw the unconscious young man inside the dragon's flesh. Her curiosity about Ananta just skyrocketed. After the incident, Nadia and Ananta have been imprisoned in Levitane's dungeon. To prevent any more unexpected incidents, the nature incarnate is being guarded by the royal guards of Queen Lagertha. The civilians are still traumatized and in chaos about the scene they just witnessed. They tried to ask the witnesses to exercise caution, but rumors did not take much time to spread within their walls. In Levitane's round table, the queen called all her closest aides to convene for a commander's meeting. There is but one item on the agenda. They need to figure out what to do with the man named Ananta. Fourth Commander Lupa, the untamed incarnate, thinks that there's no debate necessary. They shouldn't even debate keeping a dangerous monster in their fortress. They should just kill it while they have the chance. Third Commander Owl, the swordsmanship incarnate, found Ananta interesting after clashing with him and proposed that they find a way to use his power. Second Commander Tarkhan, the breakthrough incarnate, abstained as he had no interest in the matter. Queen Lagertha turned to her first commander Bernhard, the courage incarnate, for his opinion about his thoughts on the barbarian, given that he had seen him in action back in Carpes. Fourth Commander Lupa found it ridiculous that they're even debating the answer. She thinks Bernhard fucked up by bringing a monster without warning them first. Well, old Bernhard only did it because he knew that even mentioning the idea would cause a commotion. He firmly believes that Ananta is a force that they'll need in spite of any dissent. He admits that the young man's power is unstable and dangerous, but his hostility towards the Wings incarnate is real. If they can get that power under control, Ananta can become their most powerful weapon against a common enemy. As first commander, Bernhard formally proposed that they welcome Ananta as a part of Levitane's military force, which Lupa strongly opposed. She turned to Owl, thinking that the sword incarnate could have definitely killed the beast if he fought seriously. But Owl surprisingly sided with Bernhard, seeing the value in being allies with Ananta. He is certain that if the young man had been in better condition, one of them would have ended up permanently maimed. After hearing the opinions of her commanders, Queen Lagertha called the rabbit's foot messenger to step forward. It was, of course, the self-proclaimed cutie pie of Rabbit's Foot, the ever-reliable Whitefoot. While the roundtable meeting was going on, Ananta was chained up in an underground dungeon. A lady with a sultry voice appeared inside his cell, greeting him like an old friend. She was worried that he'd be down like a dejected dog after losing against Gyuyo, but it seemed like she was worried for nothing. Ananta stared at her like a wild animal. The tall and slender bunny girl warned him that if he continued to do so, she'd definitely get hot and bothered. Back in the round table, Whitefoot is exchanging pleasantries with Levitane's big dogs, introducing herself as a humble info merchant. As always, Lupa immediately became hostile. Lord Owl's eyes darted into the little rat girl, Raclette, holding on to Ruby. The swordsman turned on his dad mode and called the little girl to his side. Whitefoot assured everyone that she was just a messenger who could teleport through space. Before Bernhard and the rest returned from Carpes, she came and made an offer to the queen. She opened with a proposal regarding a power that can kill the Wings incarnate. The queen thought that the rabbit was half mad at first, but now she could see what Whitefoot was talking about. After briefly seeing Ananta in action, Queen Lagertha became interested in her offer. Whitefoot admired the queen's decisiveness and explained that all she wants is a permanent cooperative relationship between Rabbit's Foot and Levitane. In exchange, she'll give them Rabbit's Foot's most powerful weapon for defeating Gyuyo, the revenge incarnate who had been freed from his chains. Whitefoot was giving her best sales pitch, but she was interrupted by Ananta's voice calling her worthless. The air in the round table immediately became tense. Ananta asserted that he doesn't need anyone's help. Ruby jumped out of the rat girl's grasp and hurriedly ran back to her boss. Ananta, still riddled with wounds and bruises, proudly proclaimed that he was the only one who could kill Gyuyo. Lupa quickly busted out her sharp and furry claws, determined to put the criminal back in the dungeon. As for the guards that were supposed to make sure he stays locked up, their minds have been cooked. Lupa waited for the queen's kill order. Thankfully, Muscle Mommy is a level-headed leader. She ordered her commander to stand down as she wanted to hear what Ananta had to say. One look at the young man's scar-filled body is enough to determine how many mortal battles he has been through. The queen can also feel the murderous hatred flowing through his veins. She had never seen anything that even came close to it. With the absolute monster inside his body, Ananta is akin to a demon in human form. Whitefoot tries to salvage her sales pitch as she properly introduces the Revenge Incarnate. Ananta squeezed her head. He doesn't like being talked about as a product to be sold. To calm him down, the other bunny girl seductively clung to Ananta's arm and reminded him of his loss against the Wings Incarnate. She insisted that he couldn't do everything on his own, and that he was going to need as much help as he could get. As it turns out, this Gooner bait bunny girl's name is Blackfoot, Whitefoot's hornier sister. Although there's a bit of a hiccup along the way, it looks like mediation between both parties is complete. Queen Lagertha outrightly asked the young man if he could kill Gyuyo with 100% certainty. Whitefoot tried to answer for Ananta, but the queen quickly shut her ass up. She could not care less about where he came from. She was still wary about his attitude and lack of control, but she had also seen his strength with her own eyes. Every single person in Levitain wants to punish the Wings Incarnate. It is their shared grudge that binds them together. For example, 3rd Commander Owl, the Swordsmanship Incarnate, and the man Ananta fought, used to belong to a tribe that worshipped the Wings Incarnate. Ultimately, his entire tribe was massacred because of a rebellious few. He burned the coat of arms on his hand and vowed revenge. The queen did not hesitate to accept him as a companion. Just like everyone in this room, the queen can see that Ananta is harboring an unquenchable hatred for Gyuyo. The young man rudely asked the queen for her name. She didn't put on any airs and introduced herself as Lagertha Einarjar. To answer her question, Ananta explained that he is cursed to feed upon evil deities. The more he feeds upon corrupted beasts, the stronger he will become. After his recent loss, he plans on hunting more evil deities to grow his power. When the time comes, he vows to snap Gyuyo's neck with his bare hands, and all Livatain's insects have to do is support him. Hearing him insult the queen and their proud nation angered Commander Lupe even more. In contrast, the queen simply smiled and hysterically laughed in amusement at the young man's brazen audacity. He stood up from her seat and walked towards Ananta, swearing upon her honor as queen. From now on, Levitain will give it their all to assist Ananta, the Revenge Incarnate. She turned to her trusty warriors, Scald and Mare, to unchain Nadia and bring her to the round table. Meanwhile, in a plain far from the surface world, Beharon opened the doors to where Gyuyo's congregation had gathered. In an arena, Ziz had just finished electrocuting a monster to death. In the stands were 4 more beings exuding cataclysmic levels of power. As for the child born from an abomination, he looked like a psycho who enjoyed the act of killing. Gyuyo pulled up with his new drip fitting of a god. As he welcomed Beharon, they are celebrating the birth of the 3rd seat. Now that Beharon is done with his assignment, Gyuyo orders him to open the gate. Smashing his fists together, the space behind him shattered. Gyuyo stepped inside the bleak pocket dimension filled with countless abominations as far as the eye could see. The snarls and growls of the abominations filled the desolate area as Gyuyo watched from above. He looked at them with indifference. He reminded the monsters that they have been forsaken by the old gods. They have lost all dignity at the hands of evil deities and can never return to their original forms. He urged every single creature to know and remember their shame. They are unappreciated and scorned, the victims of utter injustice. Showing off his wings, he asked them if they would just give up and accept their end, if they won't fight back against their horrible destiny. Gyuyo jumped down to the den of monsters and introduced himself as the one who would bridge this rotten world with the world of the gods. Those who have any desire to profane and desecrate these cruel deities will have the chance to cast off the vile flesh of abomination. All they have to do is show that they are worthy of such a chance. Only the last one standing will receive the grace of the Wings. As soon as the Wings Incarnate announced this, a battle royal among the abominations ensued. An abominable gorilla kicked off the bloodbath by crushing a dinosaur's skull. Alligators trashed monstrous hyenas and spilled blood. Watching the chaos and desperation to come out on top made Gyuyo chuckle. He rejoiced as the abominations tear each other for a chance to regain their flesh. Back in Levitain, Nadia has been freed and invited to the round table. She saw Ananta and shot him a worried look of concern. Whitefoot greeted her with a smile and saw the strange bunny girl clinging to his arm. Queen Lagertha assured Nadia that she could relax as everything's been taken care of. The last time she saw Ananta, he was an unstable mess teetering on losing control. But maybe she was worried over nothing. After talking with the Revenge Incarnate, the Queen has decided to accept both him and Nadia as official members of Leviathan. Of course, the fiery young man protested that he never agreed to work for this underground organization. Bernhard stepped in and proposed a compromise, making a temporary alliance. No matter how they spin it, they need the Black Dragon's strength to successfully hunt the Wings Incarnate. Ananta would also benefit from the organization's assistance. As for Nadia, she needs Leviathan's existing information to find the answers she seeks. Bernhard warned her that what he was about to tell her may be very difficult to bear, but she had already made her resolve to know what she really is clear. With solid determination, she urged Bernhard to tell her about the branch that had been implanted into her body. Queen Lagertha called the branch the Mistelton. It's a relic also known as the branch of the World Tree. Back in Carpes, they saw how the abomination turned into an incarnate with Gyuyo's bizarre methods. That boy with crazy eyes was born from the soul of countless human sacrifices. The branch is often called the Blessing of the Wings. It serves as a catalyst that can turn abominations into incarnates. That means Nadia herself is an incarnate reborn through Gyuyo's intervention, which makes her a creation of the Wings Incarnate. She has her human form because of the branch. She may have originally been just another abomination, but if that was true, Gyuyo must have the power equal to that of the gods. So why would he choose to power up an abomination instead of an incarnate? The queen answered that if used on incarnates, the branch would turn them into evil deities. She knows this vital information because she saw it the day when her homeland, Valkyria, fell. As a little girl, she was forced to sail away and abandon her empire due to Gyuyo's actions. She saw those 6 cursed wings hovering on top of the castle on that nightmarish night. Her home was destroyed by the emergence of the most powerful abomination, its dark horns destroying the castle she grew up on. Valkyria's guardian was turned into a monster before her eyes. Ananta interjected. According to what the queen is saying, Nadia should be Gyuyo's servant or an evil deity by now. Yet here she is, just a meek dolt who couldn't even hurt a fly. Bernhard asserted that this is why Nadia is a special case. She might be the closest thing Gyuyo has to the edge of the world. You see, there's a legend that has been passed down through Valkyria's royal family for generations. They say that a gap that forms along with the birth of the world tree creates the so-called edge of the world. Gyuyo has been desperately making moves to find that dimensional gap to invade the world of the gods. That is why he keeps on trying to create creatures that can successfully serve as the sapling of a new world tree. But the branch, Mistelton, is too powerful for average beings to bear, let alone grow. Just look at the winner of Gyuyo's messed-up abomination battle royal. As soon as the abominable tiger accepted the branch into its body, an untold level of power immediately spread across its body. The beings that can control Mistelton's energy with any semblance of stability are extremely few and far between. In most cases, it results in the vessel's body exploding into a million little pieces. So, in order to learn more about Gyuyo's plans, Queen Lagertha and Leviathan wants to borrow Nadia and Ananta's power to slay Valkyria's royal guardian that has become an abomination. With the alliance finalized, the queen didn't dilly-dally any longer. She tasked 3rd Commander Owl and 4th Commander Lupa with a very important mission. The two of them will take a chunk of Leviathan's warriors and lead the initial campaign to the Farsa continent. They will go ahead of the main force and establish an ally outpost on the front lines. Their ultimate goal is the annihilation of the evil deities that have taken over the Farsa continent once and for all. As queen and leader, Lagertha prayed for their safety and glorious victory. 3 days before the first campaign's departure, the plan to retake Valkyria came into full swing. Valkyria's secret fortress is situated on the northeastern side of the continent. It is home to 500 of the queen's fiercest warriors and the mercenaries under Bernhard's banner. Thousands of civilians are sojourning there under their protection. As for the queen's commanders, all of them are powerful incarnates, making Leviathan the most powerful anti-wings resistance force. Since Ananta lost in the Battle of Carpes, proving that he's still far too weak, the organization would be a great help in regrouping and powering him up. From the very beginning, the encounter with the queen was a part of Whitefoot's plan. What she didn't expect was Nadia's cooperation. In any case, they have a very powerful ally on their side now. Whitefoot sees Ananta's power as a double-edged sword. He consumes the power and abilities of the deities he devours, but if he doesn't feed on powerful enemies, he loses control of his curse, permanently turning into a mindless monster. As for the bunny girl that has been staying by Ananta's side nonstop, Blackfoot, she also hails from Rabbit's Foot, like her sister. Right now, she is using her power of hypnosis to keep Ananta's rage in check. It's a temporary fix, so they really need to let our boy hunt and quell his curse as soon as possible. Since the retaking of the Farsa continent would be the best hunting ground, Whitefoot urged Nadia to make a deal with Rabbit's Foot. All she has to do is help Ananta defeat the Wings Incarnate, and the Rabbit's Foot will ensure her safety at all times. Since Nadia possesses one of the branches inside her, she is a potential juicy target for Gyuyo's forces. As a matter of fact, it's only a matter of time before the wings incarnate come after her once more. This time they may be more insistent than they were at Carpe's. Much to Whitefoot's surprise, Nadia declined her proposal. She is done hopelessly standing by as more and more people fall victim to Gyuyo's twisted plans. So she does not need anything in return. All she wants is to help in stopping all the needless sacrifices at the hands of the wings incarnate. So she will freely cooperate with Whitefoot no matter what the cost. It's not much of a deal, but both parties came to an agreement that is satisfactory on both ends. And so, Whitefoot shared the plan to retake the Farsa continent moving forward. Queen Lagertha is currently devising a plan to take back Valkyria's former capital, Folkvanger. They can only go through this mission with the addition of Ananta's power. You see, Farsa has been turned into a cursed land that defeats even death. The one who sits on top of this land is the sacred incarnate, Alicorn, or whatever's left of him. This holy unicorn was one of the first incarnates, just like the black dragon, Aji Dahaka. Throughout its endless life, it served the god of sacredness and protected Valkyria. According to the queen's accounts, Alicorn has been bastardized and turned into an abomination after it met Gyuyo. It's almost certain that another Mistleton branch is involved. In Ananta's own words, the queen and her people want him to get revenge on the beast that caused the downfall of their kingdom. All he has to do is slaughter a supercharged evil deity and get more information about the branches. It's a simple mission that even a child can understand. Ananta is ready. He is itching to be taken to his next hunting grounds right away. 3 days later, the expedition finally started. With a single click in her mystical timepiece, Whitefoot opened a portal directly leading to Farsa. With this, they can transport the united forces under the two commanders. 100 battle-hardened warriors of Valkyria are eager to return to their homeland and retake what was originally theirs. After confirming the coordinates for Folkvanger, Whitefoot gave the untied forces the signal to depart whenever they're ready. At the forefront was one of the commanders, the charming Lord Owl. He urged his troops to put on a spectacular show as soon as they arrived. Commander Lupe was much more straightforward. She warned her soldiers to avoid death. It's still too early for any of them to go to Valhalla. At the back of the line, Ananta is panting like a wild beast in heat. To his side, Blackfoot teasingly asked if he was starting to get excited for the hunt. After 3 days of fasting from evil deity meat, Ananta feels like he can murder anyone right now. The once vigorous and beautiful Farsa continent has been turned into a desolate land where nothing grows. As soon as Whitefoot's portal connected to the faraway land, the two commanders burst out at full speed ahead, ready for whatever the unknown land had in store for them. Lupe and Owl are fiending for immediate action. As soon as her sharp senses warned her of foreign entities nearby, Lupe directed Owl in its direction. What they saw was a skeleton goat, an abomination that had long since lost its flesh and blood. A freak of nature. Following behind the commanders was Nadia. She activated Yggdrasil and spawned a flurry of roots crawling towards the goat's direction. Her roots quickly transformed into a wooden horse construct with Yggdrasil Epona. She was the first one to land an attack on the abominations that have taken over the continent. Meanwhile, the commanders made their way to her spell and landed from a distance. Unfortunately, Nadia's half-cooked spell was no match against the skeletal goat. Sure, it caused some damage, making the abomination wobble, but it's still in one piece. But the next attack was far from half-cooked. Ananta came down swinging, the claws of the black dragon locked in on the skeletal beast. With his scaly arm, he shattered the goat's skull into dust in a single attack. The commanders, Nadia and Whitefoot, just stayed from a safe distance, letting the starving black dragon draw the non-existent first blood. While Lord Owl found Ananta's power impressive, Lupe did not hide her disapproval. With the participation of the nature and revenge incarnates, Lord Owl is getting the feeling that the mission to retake the continent might become more interesting than he initially thought. With the help of Nadia's Yggdrasil, the forces continued taking the less trodden path. Blackfoot is still sticking close to Ananta, making sure to keep his rage in check. She looked at her timepiece and gathered that this forsaken land didn't get any sliver of sunlight. Since Queen Lagertha tasked Owl and Lupa to carry out the joint operation between the 3rd and 4th companies, they are carrying the highest risk. Folkvanger is on the northern coast but is otherwise surrounded by vast grassland in the south. The capital was established as the land of the Alicorn and his mystics after all. In the past, Valkyria was able to prevent the invasion of hostile neighboring nations thanks to their mystics. But now, those protectors have become deplorable abominations roaming the wastelands aimlessly. The mission's topmost priority is to establish a base to prepare breaking through the barrier. Lupa and Owl will lead the vanguard to set up the upcoming attack. Owl asked if it was necessary to establish a base at all when they could just be teleported in the middle of the battlefield using Whitefoot's power. However, her power has a limitation that necessitates the establishment of a base camp. It would be wonderful if they could just teleport directly to the capital, but she can only transport her targets to the safest spot near the destination. At the moment, the advance party can only enter as far as the woods to the south. Using Whitefoot's ability any further would require establishing a safe zone further north. With the safe area within several miles of the infested capital, the danger level of the mission is high. This necessitates Ananta and Nadia's assistance. Commander Lupa reckons that the Queen is being way too careful. She argued that her company, combined with Owl's, would be more than enough. But this is Queen Lagartha's homeland we're talking about. She sternly gave Lupa an official decree to ensure that she and Ananta's group must regroup with the main troops a week after the raid's kickoff. She also ordered them to stay alive at any cost. Her final command as their leader is for her soldiers to return to their comrades in one piece. Once the group had settled in their makeshift camp, Ruby's time to shine brightly and make fire for everyone had come. Using the skeletal remains of the dead abomination, she lit up the surroundings with a sizable flare. Nadia wordlessly prayed for the abomination's soul, and Lupa stared at her like she was committing a crime. The fourth commander's eyes gradually shifted towards Ananta, and the sight of him and that horny bunny girl irked Lupa heavily. Owl noticed her expression and playfully teased that she should hide her dislike a little better. Since they are entering the woods soon, it would be wiser to rest rather than seethe in anger. Moreover, the moment they stepped into this cursed continent, they became comrades. Still, the hard-headed commander refuses to accept those randoms as comrades. She thinks calling them as such would be an insult to their real comrades that have fallen, the people she can actually entrust with her life no matter what. With that in mind, she would never assign a word that carries so much meaning to sketchy strangers. With her anger reaching its boiling point, the stubborn commander walked towards Ananta to give him a piece of her mind. She noticed that he hadn't been able to get a hold of himself after a little skirmish. In her eyes, that makes him a weakling. Lupa doesn't respect a warrior who can't carry himself on the battlefield without a pesky guardian to nurse him at all times. Ananta is done taking the insults and asks Lupa to get straight to the point. She had accepted that Queen Lagartha was interested in his power, but Lupa still didn't buy it. They have seen time and time again that Ananta is struggling to control his power. He even had to hold back against the first abomination in fear of completely losing control again. Seeing the confrontation, Nadia interrupted after feeling the rising tensions. In her arms, Ruby glared at the commander, ready to pounce. Lupa accused him of being a ticking time bomb that could blow up on everyone. Nevertheless, Ananta is not taking any shit from the mouthy commander. She is so stubborn and territorial that she'd rather not have a dragon on her team. Lupa's arms stretched and enlarged, her nails turning into sharp claws, as she ordered Ananta to take his friends and get lost. She'll just tell the queen that the cowards ran once shit got real. If he refuses, she threatens to tear him limb from limb before the main force arrives. Do you know how our boy responded to that blatant threat? He let some of his murderous aura leak as she commanded the wolf to get out of his face before he added a death count to the operation. With a graceful sleight of hand and her power coming into play, Blackfoot dispelled the rising tensions with magic. Suddenly, Lupa found herself in a cavern filled with countless monster skeletons. A sea of remains. She tried to make sense of where she was and failed. Light is poured into the cavern as its roof gets blown up, reducing the solid structure into rubble. Lupa shielded her eyes from the dust and debris. When she finally got a good look above, her eyes dilated in surprise. The fourth commander saw the ever-reliable form of Queen Lagartha and her comrades. That was the effect of Blackfoot's potent hypnosis on Lupa. The bunny girl reprimanded Ananta for stoking the flames of trouble when the commander started the fight out of nowhere. Nevertheless, both of them are inches away from crossing a line. Thankfully, Blackfoot was there, putting the hot-blooded fools under her bewitching hypnosis trance. Ananta clicked his tongue in annoyance and turned his head away. Suddenly, his sharp senses kicked in as soon as he detected movement inside the eerie area. When he came to, the first thing Ananta did was shove Blackfoot away like she was nothing. A few moments later, Ananta's actions became apparent. The presence that he detected had come for them. It was a giant snack with a giant scaly body and voracious fangs. The uninvited serpent lunged and chomped down on its targets, not giving them any time to react properly. By the time Lord Owl noticed what was happening, his co-commander was nowhere to be seen anymore. After swallowing his dinner whole, the giant serpent rumbled and crawled back to whatever shithole he came from as fast as it could. Maintaining composure, Owl ordered his men to organize a 10-soldier search team to track down the snake as quickly as possible. He intended to go with the search team, but the rumbling of the ground they were standing on made everyone pause in their tracks. From the horizon, abominations in the shape of horses came running in like a wild beast stampede. Nadia saw the incoming collision and gripped her staff tightly. Chanting Yggdrasil Totates, she summoned 3 sharp roots darting out of the ground and pierced the abominable horses with laser-like precision. While the soldiers were running around like headless chickens, Nadia was the one who stepped up to salvage their situation. She warned them that the enemies were coming. It's do or die from this point on. Meanwhile, Commander Lupa managed to live through being snake dinner. but she's in quite an awkward position right now. Behind Lupa, the young man held her lithe body tightly while hiding behind the trees. Ananta covered her mouth to prevent any noises that would attract unwanted attention. Just a few meters away from the two survivors were a plethora of serpents, slowly and methodically looking for their next meal. Rolling the clock a few seconds back, we see Ananta and the unconscious Commander Lupa inside the stomach of the giant serpent who dined and dashed on them. Ananta could feel his flesh sizzling upon being exposed to the snake's digestive juices, which coated the stomach lining. Feeling the pressure to get out, he did what he did best, and went sicko mode on the serpent's insides. His arms turned to draconic claws, digging into the stomach lining, ripping it apart by the second. When the snake finally felt that something might be wrong with his insides, it was too late. Ananta burst out of the snake's body, gore and blood spewing all over the woods. The damage was bad enough to claim the monster's life. The young man emerged from the flesh hole he made. In his arms was Commander Lupa. When the commander woke up, she found herself facing Ananta. She jumped in fright, still trying to figure out what was going on. Looking closely, she saw the scars on Ananta's body, signs of burns from corrosive substances. Fortunately, or unfortunately, the snake's digestive juices dissolved the commander's clothes. Ananta explained that he managed to get them out of the snake somehow. That means he saved her from certain death. Lupa refused to believe that the man he criticized for being a shitty team player turned out to be a pretty good comrade. Thankfully, Ananta found a spot where they can stay put and rest while they figure out their next move. But Lupa woke up stressed out. She wanted to know how much time had passed and the status of their HQ. Before she could get answers to her questions, Ananta grabbed her arm and pulled her into a solid embrace. Caught by surprise and Ananta's surprising strength, Lupa couldn't even fight back. When he shoved his hand to cover her mouth, something clicked inside the wolf girl's mind. But Ananta was just doing his best to keep her and himself alive while more giant snakes frolicked within their vicinity. Ananta made a foolish mistake. The spot he thought was safe turned out to be the snake's territory. On all sides, they are completely surrounded by oversized serpents. Eventually, Ananta noticed that something was off. These snakes don't really look or behave like abominations. They might not even be mystics. Lupa asked if he was going to fight his way out of this predicament. Ananta surprisingly answered that fighting won't be practical. He admitted that Lupa was right. He can't fully control his power right now. He's afraid of the curse taking over if he accidentally uses too much power without Blackfoot nearby to keep him in check. But he won't just resign and become snake lunch for the second time. Right now, they have two plans of action to choose from. First, they can risk injury and fight the snakes. Second, they can try to run and regroup with the others. Being civil, Ananta gave Lupa the freedom to choose what they do. But instead of picking between two shitty plans, Commander Lupa proposed that they go for choice number 3. They break through, get out of the woods, and head towards the whole mission's ultimate goal. Using her animalistic senses, Lupa sniffed and smelled the surroundings. She discovered that the woods reeked of giant snakes searching for their next prey. If they tried to fight, they'd just be surrounded in a matter of seconds. And even if they managed to regroup with others, that scenario would inevitably end up causing needless sacrifice. It's a good plan on paper, but Ananta doesn't have a clue on how it can work. Lupa swallowed her pride and got on her knees. She presented her back for Ananta to ride. Don't worry, we're staying PG. While on her knees, 4th Commander Lupa, the untamed incarnate, lets her power take over. She warned Ananta to hold on tight if he didn't want to fall off. Lupa's form swapping immediately attracted the snake's attention. By the time they slithered to the disturbance's origin, the silhouette of a man riding a wolf flew past them. The snakes tried to catch up and take a bite, only to get ripped apart in the most brutal and bloody fashion. Lupa is not called the untamed incarnate for nothing. In her mouth was the hefty chunk of snake flesh. She tossed the meat off the side of the road, taunting the other serpents hot on her heels. At this rate, they are almost out of the woods. This might be bold and crazy, but it should draw some of the danger away from their comrades fighting for their lives in the base camp. Imagine her surprise when the shape of a man, seemingly waiting for them to emerge, came into view up ahead. Ananta's eyes immediately darted toward the man's cloak, and the familiar sigil was drawn over it. Old man got gray hair, gray beard, a monocle, and an aura-farming giant king cobra as a pet. His reptilian eye flared up. He apologized and asserted that no one gets past him. The old man's shadows morphed into snakes, gathering and getting bigger by the second. Once they reached the wolf and the man, the shadow snakes bared their fangs and attacked in unison. Even for Ananta, the attack felt way too fast. They might not be able to dodge. So, Wolf Lupa bit down on his arm and tossed him as hard as she could. She threw him into safety, acting as the bait to hold the shadow snakes in place. Ananta saw her howl in pain and immediately scrambled his way back into action. His arms morphed into draconic claws once more, swiping and dicing every shadow snake along the way. Lupa's transformation became undone, scattering her wolf body into the wind. She hopes that her save will make them even better. She paid the debt, but at what cost? The old man called her actions futile. She tried to sacrifice herself to save a comrade. How cliché. While he was yapping his gums, he felt a ferocious chill going up his spine. It was the bloodthirsty gaze of Ananta. Just as expected, the curse is starting to go out of control, but that only makes him hungrier for murder. Back in the base camp, the abomination horses neighed their death wails. Lord Owl unsheathed his dual blades, locking and loading his raptor strike. With one straight stab piercing the abomination's heart, Owl's heavy lance made easy work of the horse. As the beast lifelessly plopped to the ground, Lord Owl could not shake the worry from his chest. Nadia was miraculously pulling her weight, catching and neutralizing abominations with her wood constructs. The whole camp worked so well together that they did not even suffer a single casualty. Owl stashed his blades away and sought Nadia to share his gut feeling about their situation. While he was fighting the horses, he felt that the abominations were not after them at all. It was almost as if they were running from a predator and just happened to pass by the army while they were fleeing. It could be related to the giant snake that swallowed Lupa and Ananta. Blackfoot interjected and tried to convince the commander to stop theorizing and start mobilizing a team to find Ananta as quickly as possible. They need to prioritize finding their double-edged weapon before things get beyond Blackfoot's bewitching powers' control. Speaking of the devil, Ananta is currently trying to suck the nasty poison ravaging Lupa's body after being ganked by shadow snakes. The man controlling the snakes already told Ananta that sucking the poison out is useless. His serpent's poison is so deadly that it can even kill mystics in an instant. Without the help of a competent healer, Lupa, the untamed incarnate, is as good as dead. Ananta gently laid her body on the ground, softly telling her to wait. He intends to skin that old snake in the most literal sense of the word. His arms split and stretched, making way for his ferocious transformation. Lupa had already given up and tried to stop Ananta from making stupid decisions. But our boy had already set his sights on defeating the old snake man in front of him and taking Lupa back to Nadia. The old man sensed the chaotic energy of the young man's curse. It was as biting as the winter's wind. He remembered Beharan mentioning Ananta a while ago. Taking his first step forward, the old man caused his shadow serpents to gather and slither out once more. The old snake man curtly introduced himself as Asen. You see, old Asen here is also known as the Blind Faith Incarnate. He's practically a brainwashed cult goon serving the wings. The standard shadow snakes he summoned fearlessly bared their fangs against the dragon. Ananta didn't even see them as threats. He just ran directly into them and ripped their shadowy bodies into shreds. Old Asen was not expecting his first attack to be so useless. Before his eyes is the hulking frame of the black dragon. For the first time in a long time, Asen felt fear. Composing himself, Asen used his shadow serpents to propel himself to the air, dodging Ananta's unstoppable attack. He managed to dodge, but if he was slower by just a little, he would have been clipped in one shot. Just to simplify the combat, Ananta shifted targets to Asen's pet snake and gutted that scaly bastard in less than a second. Back to a fair one-on-one matchup, he proceeded to wail on Asen's old bones. Feeling the pain of every punch, the old man mockingly laughed at Ananta's attempts. Asen admitted that when it comes to speed, raw strength, inhuman reaction, and every other physical metric, Ananta is the perfect beast without a flaw. However, Asen refuses to get upstaged. He shed his old human skin and revealed his real form. A four-armed snake man oozing deadly miasma. From a distance, the poisoned Lupa tried to get back up as hard as she could. She lifted her head and gasped as she saw Ananta brawling it out and throwing hands with a giant four-armed snake behemoth. She wondered why a stranger that she's been beefing with for the whole mission is putting himself in danger for a chance to save her. It reminded Lupa of the time when she asked her queen how she could risk her life fighting for the sake of others so fearlessly. Queen Lagertha simply answered that a comrade is someone you can always trust with your life. When she wholeheartedly told Lupa that she would risk her life for the young pup, Lupa was enamored with the idea of camaraderie. And so, Lupa got on all fours and started her wolf transformation as she apologized to her queen for she might not be able to keep her promise to come back alive. Just as Asen was about to land another haymaker on Ananta's body, his arm suddenly vanished. In its place was a bleeding stump. He didn't even see the attack with how fast it was. 1 second he had 4 arms, the next he only had 3. That's still one too many. Even with deadly poison circulating all over her body, Lupa still has that dog in her. She's literally a dog. Asen panically scanned the surroundings, trying to look for his assailant. But he was too late. Lupa pushed her wolf body to the limits and delivered the goriest stamp of gore she had ever executed. She sliced and diced Asen's scaly body from every angle, leaving countless deep wounds across her wake. Lupa tried to go harder and finish the job once and for all, only to feel the poison make her stagger. She was forced to jump away as Asen gasped in sharp pain. While the snake cultist was just trying to stay alive and breathing, he felt death closing in from his flank. It came in the form of the overbearing black dragon's hunger for flesh. Ananta promptly read the old snake's final judgment, ordering him to howl like the foul beast that he is. With one decisive chomp, Ananta munched on Isen's upper body. It looks like the dragon is eating snake spaghetti. Inside the dragon's maw, Isen was assaulted by the countless evil deities that Ananta had devoured. Inside, the old snake felt the branch of the world tree planted inside him slowly split apart. This triggered his fight or flight response. In this case, it's mostly flight as he called on Quetzalcoatl. From deep within the mountains of Valkyria, an enormous figure flew out with a blinding fast speed. It was Winged Sky Serpent, Isen's get-out-of-jail-for-free card. While he gasped and tried to catch his breath, Isen quietly asked for the Conquest Incarnate's forgiveness. Sure, he managed to stay alive and be saved thanks to Quetzalcoatl's interference, but Isen failed his mission and his boss's orders. He was tasked with eliminating intruders, but it's not really fair to put him up against this beast of a man in the form of a legendary beast. Which was odd. While they were fighting, Isen held the advantage the majority of the time. With his extra limbs, he dominated the close-quarters combat. Ananta, who was used to using his overwhelming strength, was being pushed to defend himself instead. But there was a bigger problem here. Halfway through the fight, Ananta's diminishing control over his curse started slipping. To feast is to release the curse in order to swallow evil deities as sustenance. But if he failed to feed his urges soon, the curse would take over and swallow everything in the vicinity. That includes the poisoned Commander Lupa, and he can't let that happen. While Isen continued his barrage of punches, Ananta was surprised at the juicy chance Lupa just handed her. The splatter of blood made the air stink of iron. After being critically hit by the stamp of gore, the old snake is vulnerable to a finisher. Ananta could feel Lupa telling him to take care of the rest as she fell and succumbed to the poison's effect. The vicious wolf fell flat on the floor with a loud thud. After the fight and Isen was bailed out, Ananta stood in the middle of the battleground, his aura overflowing. He felt as though every part of his body was filled with a newfound power. It's almost as if he swallowed an unquenchable flame, making his heart thump with more vigor. It's a hefty upgrade, but it's still not enough for his curse's hungry ass. He looked up and saw the retreating frame of old Isen on the back of the sky serpent. Ananta could feel the presence of the world tree's branch, and it made his mouth water more. His back split open, his scale and flesh cracked and stretched as he sprouted dragon wings. With perfect control of his anatomy, he made a kick-ass flying apparatus to chase and kill his enemies. His eyes were turned to the skies. His mind is racing at the thought of feasting on snake snacks. Miraculously, Ananta managed to keep his bloodthirst in check. He looked down on Lupa's quickly dying body and froze. At this point, he can either try to save her or chase after the injured enemies and finish the job. He recalled Lupa entrusting him with the final blow with respect and faith. From then on, the choice was simple. A few hours later, Lupa opened her eyes once more. This time, she woke up with a less hectic and confusing view. Nadia was by her side, curing her body and dispelling the poison. Relieved that Lupa woke up, Nadia asked her patient how she felt. Her whole body has been bandaged up, and her mind is still fuzzy on the details of what happened. She tried to get up, but that was a bad idea. Her injuries are severe, and the commander is still in critical condition at this point. Nadia explained that the poison in Lupa's body almost killed her. If it wasn't neutralized in time, she would have kicked the bucket already. It's a good thing Ananta sprouted wings to bring her back to the camp as quick as he could. If the young man hadn't clutched up, they would have been down one commander by now. Lupa couldn't believe that Ananta would save her again and again. She called him an idiot, and he happened to overhear. Ananta asked if insults are how she repays people for saving her life. Lord Owl didn't miss the chance to playfully fan the flames between the two. Lupa gave Ananta a once-over and asked him about his wounds. He simply asked her to worry about her injuries instead. He also warned her to stop thinking about doing anything foolish and pushing herself instead of healing up. Ananta is getting tired of saving her ass over and over. Nadia still can't get used to the young man's crass words. Commander Lupa, on the other hand, felt something different after going through what she went through with Ananta. The squad posted up on the bonfire outside to discuss their next action. For now, Lupa will heal and rest. Lord Owl bowed and sincerely extended his gratitude to Ananta for going out of his way to save Lupa. After receiving the rough rundown of what happened in the woods, Nadia became curious about the enemy they fought, who seemed like Yuyo's subordinate. Ananta shared everything he knows. He fought an old man named Isen, who had the power to summon snakes from his shadow. As far as Ananta can tell, those snakes were mere fragments of the source without intelligence. They can only perform simple, predetermined actions. Judging by the lack of predation evidence nearby, he reckons that these snakes have been unleashed to simply ward off intruders pushing deeper into the Farsa continent. The first snake that attacked and swallowed them whole led Ananta to believe that these serpents were tasked with returning to their master after capturing intruders. The reason for such a sequence is still unknown. More importantly, Ananta discovers something about his power. After he tried consuming Aeson, he definitely felt a part of the World Tree's branch had been absorbed into him. Blackfoot softly caressed his shoulders and confirmed that she can see the change in his power too. She observed that his curse has become much more stable than before. She didn't think that just a fragment of the branch could do this much for Ananta's curse. That doesn't justify her clinginess, though. Nevertheless, Blackfoot can already imagine what would happen if Ananta could devour an entire branch. Lord Owl, who's been silently contemplating, finally spoke up. He remembers Aeson from his days serving the Wings. The old snake is the blind faith incarnate and the sixth seat of Sephiroth. Unfamiliar with the term, Nadia asked what he meant by Sephiroth. Owl expounded that the Sephiroth consists of the Wings incarnate's most elite guardians. They are the 10 most powerful beings bestowed with the power of the branch. To be more specific, Sephiroth is made up of Gyuyo's 5 most powerful warriors and each of their assistants. If Aeson is in this cursed continent, then there's a very real possibility that one of Gyuyo's 5 direct subordinates might show up soon. For those in the know, the top Sephiroth seats are as powerful as walking calamities. The winged sky serpent who rescued Aeson finally landed on his perch, the broken castle of the fallen Valkyria kingdom. The old snake is still trying to catch his breath and recover from the bloody beating. Quetzalcoatl's body slowly scattered in the wind, revealing a man calling Aeson out for looking like a terrified animal. With an intense gaze, the man asked the old snake if his pride had been wounded. Like the good cult goon that he is, Aeson wallowed in self-pity, asserting that he's worthy of all scorn and contempt from his boss, the man in front of him, the Conquest incarnate. He was given the duty to stop anyone from heading deeper into the Farsa continent. It was a simple defense mission, and he failed spectacularly. He was supposed to remove all those who attempted to obstruct his boss's conquest. Battle-hardened Gahan, also known as the Conquest incarnate and the second seat of the Sephiroth, is not pleased with his assistant's recent performance. It looks like he'll have to step in himself, so he ordered Aeson to lead the way towards the ops so he can slaughter every single one of them. Before all this mess started, he was asked to show up for a sit-down meeting with his boss, the Wings incarnate. Gyuyo was just out in his own dimension doing all sorts of fucked-up experiments on abominations. With Behiran at his side, the meeting with the easily agitated Gahan was tougher. As soon as he heard an iota of insult in Behiran's words, he demanded that Gyuyo's lapdog address him with the utmost respect. It's evident that there's a rich and complicated history between these two powerhouses. Seeing one of his men full of vigor and life, Gyuyo smiled at Gahan. He called the Conquest incarnate and went up to his gory office to hand a personal request. As we know, Aeson is a cult cuck. He swiftly got on his knees and offered his services to his one true god. Gahan, on the other hand, was a lot more apprehensive. Nevertheless, he respectfully punched his fist and palm together. He might be a bit of a freak, but he's not one to turn down a request from the Great Wings. At this point, Gyuyo had received reports of Queen Lagertha's movement from a spy in Levitain. Before the raid even started, Gyuyo already sniffed the plan to retake the Farsa continent. Hearing the involvement of the Queen and the location, Gahan asked if the enemies are after the Sacredness incarnate. Gyuyo reckoned that they are. So, Gahan's assignment is to find the failure that has been created with an incomplete branch. Afterward, he must slay the beast and retrieve the branch. Like an annoying teacher's pet, Aeson interjected and begged his lord to give him the task. He promised to willingly eradicate the weak humans and complete the mission. Behiran asked the old snake if he remembered what had happened to Balzac not long ago. As it turns out, that lunatic was the disgraced former 10th seat of Sephiroth. Behiran warned Aeson that the human with Aji Dahaka's curse that slayed Balzac is with Levitain now. He survived facing both Behiran and the Wings incarnate himself after killing a former Sephiroth. For the defense of the Farsa continent, some old snake won't be enough. They need Gahan on the case too as insurance. As soon as he heard that he might be able to fight against some interesting enemies, Gahan's lips twisted to an excited smile as he asked for more information about Ananta. You see, if Behiran can be considered the mightiest spear, Gahan completes the unbeatable pair as the mightiest shield. Aeson admits that his boss is one of the most powerful in Sephiroth. He is also the most dangerous of them all. Unlike the others who are at the Wings incarnate's beck and call, Gahan has absolute loyalty tied to the Wings. Aeson reckons that this task could have been more easily completed by the 4th and 5th Sephiroth seats. So why did Gyuyo hand it to the troublesome Gahan instead? Holding up a wilted piece of mystical wood in his hand, Gahan asked Aeson if he recognized the artifact. It is none other than the incomplete branch that had been buried deep in the Alicorn's heart, the thing that turned the Sacredness incarnate into a mindless beast. Gahan investigated the incomplete branch and concluded that it is laughably inferior to the ones the current Sephiroth hosts in their bodies. With this, they should be done with the mission that Gyuyo tasked them with, but Gahan nonchalantly threw the incomplete branch down instead. It plummeted from the rooftop of the ruined castle down to the lowest floor. Asen could not understand the actions of his unruly boss. They were explicitly ordered to take the branch and return it to Gyuyo. Geihan grinned with greed. From the very beginning, he always worked for himself. Just like he declared before, his aim is to slaughter every enemy. He asked his assistant what happened to the alicorn and his hordes of followers that used to rule Valkyria. You see, Geihan made quick work of the monsters roaming the kingdom and compiled them into an unidentifiable mass of flesh. In the conquest, Incarnate's hand is the alicorn's horn. No big deal. His mind is already set on a bigger target. A man who survived against the mightiest spear and the wings Incarnate himself. If this alleged curse is indeed that powerful, he reckons that it is only right that he prepares a stage befitting the enemy's might. Geihan awaits Ananta's arrival with bated, murderous breath. 1 week of relatively quiet development later, the forces of Levitain have managed to build a decently safe base camp. All their preparations for the final fight are complete. Nadia's wooden construct opened wide, a sign of Whitefoot's teleportation ability. Footsteps can be heard heading out of the wooden hole. At the forefront was the battle-ready Supreme Warrior, the rightful heir of Valkyria, Queen Lagertha Einherjar. Her trusted commanders, Owl and Lupa, welcomed her with confident smiles. The queen is happy to see that her risky bet to send an advance party panned out safely. She turned to Ananta and Nadia to extend her thanks for all their help. Queen Lagertha turned to her aides, Skald and Mare, to confirm that the rest of the attack force had been accounted for. Skald confirms that all 50 of the Sisters of the Shield are assembled. The Queen's Royal Guard has also answered the call. Crass as always, Ananta rudely asked the Queen how she felt now that she had returned to her ruined homeland. Usually she would just laugh at the rude comments. But this time is different. She didn't come here for jokes. Ignoring Ananta, Queen Lagertha walked to the edge of the base camp and took the sights of her homeland after all these years of being away. Whitefoot approached the Queen and confirmed if she had been briefed about how things stand as of right now. You see, a giant pillar of light has appeared in the direction of the capital. If you ask those who are familiar with Gyuyo's antics, they will say without a doubt that the light appears when the power of the branch is being manifested. First, the encounter with the 6th seat of Sephiroth, and now the sign of the branch's power, accounting for everything. It is highly likely that the enemy is setting some kind of a trap. But things have changed significantly since the last report. If they want to use Whitefoot's power in this situation, she will need at least 3 days of preparation. If they move forward, retreating won't be a realistic choice anymore. To answer that, the Queen turned to her soldiers, her people, and her sisters. They have now stepped foot on the land in which they were raised. It has been years since they lost their homeland. It has been years since they were forced to wander the continent because of Gyuyo's meddling. Thus, Queen Lagertha swore to take her land back for the lamenting people of Levitain. In doing so, she will return Valkyria to its former glory. Make Valkyria great again. When that day comes, she shall cry out before the spirits of their allies that have fallen along the way. This expedition is the culmination of their extensive work. Success would mean that their sacrifices were not made in vain. Valkyria's return to glory is only made possible by the blood and sweat of its people. Queen Lagertha stoked the flames in the hearts of her righteous comrades, her brave warriors to accompany her in arms and fight. Moved to tears, every single Valkyrian warrior hyped up their queen, ready to take a bullet for her if necessary. I'm not sure this world has guns, though. Ananta and Ruby watched from the sidelines, letting the queen and her people have their moment. Without wasting another second, they set their sights on the capital, Folkvanger, and sounded the battle horns. The expedition party route has been assigned as such. The main party consisting of 100 troops, including all the commanders, the Queen, Nadia, and Ananta, are going to make an upward push for the capital, while 50 reserve troops stay with Whitefoot and Blackfoot in the outpost. The sisters can't believe that they're stuck in the base camp, left to wait for the war's results. Blackfoot sighed. She really wanted to see Ananta in action, and she can't do that from all the way back here. Whitefoot was chill. She's enjoying her tea and hanging out with her sister. She reckons that Blackfoot's help is no longer necessary on the front lines, now that Ananta's curse has stabilized for the most part. Regardless of the result of this expedition, Whitefoot's power is everyone's lifeline. It's only natural that Queen Lagertha would keep her safe in the outpost. But she knew as well as anyone that the reserve troops weren't left here to protect them. They're here to monitor any sussy activity. The fact of the matter is that Levitain still doesn't fully trust Rabbit's Foot. Blackfoot sat beside her sister and asked if she thought the expedition would succeed. To be completely honest, Whitefoot answered that she does not give a fuck if the mission succeeds or not. All she really wants is for Ananta to become more powerful than he already is. He must accumulate strength, even if it means sacrificing everyone else. Myr's arrows struck the heads of pesky summoned snakes that littered the woods. The ever-so-reliant Skald was there to finish the job and land the last hit. Around them, the rest of the warriors did their thing. The elite soldiers and commanders carried most of the workload. They are under the orders to continue advancing as more and more giant snakes mobbed them from multiple angles. Sensing that the enemies were gathering to their right, Queen Lagertha ordered her units to pull in. The regular soldiers might be out of their depth in direct confrontation, but they can work together seamlessly to build shield walls, repelling the enemies. Feeling fancy with it, Ananta called on Ruby to help bring in the heat. The little fire lizard jumped on top of the shield wall and fixed her eyes on the incoming snake battalion. As soon as Ananta gave her the go signal to roast the snakes, Ruby unleashed a bright flare that torched anything that entered her range. Ananta is playing it safe. Judging by their current pace, they won't need his help against cannon fodders for the time being. Much to his surprise, the attack force is advancing even though they're insurmountably outnumbered and surrounded. Still, knowing that one mistake could lead to a full-on wipeout, Ananta kept his guard up and senses sharp. Nevertheless, this next level of coordination shows just how confident Levitane is in their troops. Mir with her arrows, Skald with her sword and shield, and Queen Lagertha with her unparalleled stratagems and shot-calling. It is a reckless plan, but it is working. Their current headache is the scaly fragments from the blind faith incarnate. The Queen is confident that her well-trained troops would have no trouble cleaning up these beasts. After steadily pushing forward, they reach the center of Farsa. The odd thing is that the Alicorn and the Abominations are not showing themselves yet. Leading the vanguard, Skald informed her queen that they had reached the snake-infested Vigritter Tower. On top of the said tower is a persistent old man, welcoming them to the battle's next phase. After miserably losing against Ananta, this old snake still had the audacity to call the opposition wicked fools who dared deny the wings incarnate. He is determined to watch the attack force's final moments after being humiliated. Mir tried to sneak in a supersonic arrow shot, but it was slapped away like an annoying fly. From this moment on, the salty old man intends to take over. He wants to subject the people of Levitane to his petty wrath. Behind him emerged the winged sky serpent. Quetzalcoatl flew above the tower while carrying a bag of mysterious wriggling flesh on its tail. Queen Lagertha looked at the lump of flesh and felt chills coming down her spine. She felt a familiar feeling as soon as the snake rope holding the mound of flesh in place scattered to the wind. Reacting promptly, the queen ordered her troops to maintain defensive formations and hold firm. Quetzalcoatl finally launched the mound right into the spot with the highest concentration of soldiers. The impact alone made quite a spectacle as dust swallowed the whole battlefield. Once it settled, the queen and her troops laid their eyes upon the weird amalgamation of fleshy material splattered flat on the ground. Queen Lagertha paused in her tracks upon seeing something human-like squirm its way out of the middle of the meat. A few seconds later, the human-like figure took full form. The shape of a man skinned alive for his top half, and the body of a fucked-up horse in the bottom. Once known as the Alicorn, the sacredness incarnate had seen better days. The bony Alicorn mumbles something indecipherable. It seems like only the queen understood the ancient language he spoke. Whatever it was, the mumbling made Lagertha order a full-on emergency retreat. Much to everyone's horror, Alicorn's mouth split open as a giant eye regurgitates up from its throat. Then came a loud and bloody splattering of his body, causing the mound of meat to move outwards. It was like a fleshy tsunami that consumed everything it could touch. Not recognizing enemy or foe, the hungry meat even feasted on the summoned snakes. Unfortunately, the queen's soldiers in the vanguard also fell victim to the gluttonous meat heap. Skald tried her hardest to repel the incoming deluge of flesh. Her raw strength was enough to keep it in check. But how can you kill a thing that can't even be identified? When threatened, the mass of flesh just squirms and absorbs the weapon used to attack. After absorbing everything it could touch, the mass of flesh squirmed once more. This time, it gave birth to a singular horn peppered with unsettling eyes. Attached to that horn is none other than the original incarnate-turned-evil deity, Alicorn. The meaty gore of Alicorn's disfigured body splatted on the queen's troops, but they held strong. Lagertha even riled up her old friend to demonstrate his insurmountable strength. Well, it looks like she is getting what she asked for. The Alicorn came in running horn first, seemingly eager to pierce through their defense. But doing that won't be easy, especially with Ananta tagging back in now that a worthy opponent has shown himself. While he holds Alicorn's body in place with his supreme physical prowess, Lord Owl comes in with the DPS of his raptor claw. Commander Lupa refused to be left out and jumped in to deliver a sharp and lethal brand of gore. Taking the left and the right, respectively, the two commanders beautifully worked in conjunction with one another. While her commanders are showing off, it's unfair for the queen to be left out. As she unsheathes her sword, Lagertha assured Alicorn that she will end his life herself. She stalwartly stood before the evil deity with the intent to kill. The queen believes that it is her duty as Alicorn's friend to end the suffering. Feeling like it was his time to shine and dispose of the biggest target, Ananta came in swinging. Unfortunately for him, Such a barbaric approach left him flying up in the air after being tossed away by Alicorn's grotesque horn. Then, this eldritch, horror-looking horse bastard started accumulating dark energy at the tip of his horn. As soon as the dark energy formed a quasar and flew away from the horn, it homed in on Ananta. Our boy felt the full brunt of being struck by a literal black hole to the face. Half of his body was ground down to the atomic level as the emptiness of the black hole deleted his upper half. Lupa panically called Ananta's name. The concern in her voice was apparent. The man who saved her multiple times had hit the floor with half of his body gone. Any other regular bastard would have died right then and there. Enraged by Alicorn's target selection, Commander Lupa lunged in with her sharp claws drawn. She wanted to attack from the flank to avoid the horn. But from the back, she would have to deal with Alicorn's freaky tail filled with countless eyes and hungry mouths. All of Lupa's instincts told her to stop and turn around. She would be one-shotted if she pushed any further. Thankfully, Lord Owl was there. As the more experienced combatant, he maintained his wits about him. With his dual blades and raptor rondo, Owl minced the freaky tail to bits. Seeing an opening opportunity ripe to be exploited, Lupa started her engine back up and ran in at full throttle. She was so tunnel-visioned on attacking Alicorn that she failed to sense an incoming surprise attack from an off angle. It was a green sludge of noxious snot. Once more, Lord Owl's vigilance bailed her ass out. Owl moved to the limits of his speed as he swished past where the noxious snot was heading. He had to move as fast as he could while also carrying Lupa out of danger. As a result, he paid for it with an injured arm. As it turns out, old Asen was just sneaking in a snot attack in hopes of taking one of Lupa's arms as payment for the arms that she took from him. After this grand battle, he intends to skin the wolf himself. The noxious snot was coming from the sky serpent's mouth. From the top of the tower, it served as a long-ranged cannon capable of causing toxic destruction. This is not looking good for the attack force. Things keep getting worse, and their opponents are borderline broken. As the next snot blast reached its target, Lupa returned the favor. This time, she shifted to her wolf form and saved Lord Owl from tanking one of those green sludges. Suddenly, one of Quetzalcoatl's wings was defeathered and slashed at supersonic speeds. Out of balance, the sky serpent squirmed and wriggled in the air as it nosedived down the ground. The culprit was none other than the queen's little archer, Myrrh. Beckoning the free spirit of the wind, she charged her arrows with mystical energy, blessing her with the wind of victory. With a little reprieve, Skald regained control of her faction, and